unlimited defense budgets, unmatched legal expertise. Carry the same level of support police officers have. Carry CCW Safe, the highest caliber.
And we're back. And I'm joined tonight by my co-host, John Wheaton. We've got Bill Brown and Rob Sweetman back that our audience has met before. And Jeff, nice to meet you. Great to have you on. Since our audience has already met Bill and Rob, Jeff, I'll have you go ahead and introduce yourself so I don't do you any injustices.
All right. Thank you for having me. So I was a 10-year Navy SEAL, served at Team 5, was an instructor, and then did my MBA at UCLA and founded some different companies now. Big supporter of the Hudson Seal Swim that Bill Brown puts on every year. And everybody wears the Sunga Life Silkies that I created for that. It's a swimmer brand all about freedom.
Man, that's awesome, Jeff. I really appreciate you being here tonight. So we're going to jump right into it. And we've got an interview with Pete Hegseth. And let me see here. It's a minute and 47 long. We'll listen to the whole one, and then we'll kick the conversation off.
The Pentagon is in the book, the exact amount of years, but in the past X number of years, 10, 12, 15, the Pentagon has a perfect record in all of its war games against China. We lose every time inside the Pentagon war games. We know what our real capability. You see, we didn't even get to this part of the war on warriors. I mean, the military-industrial complex, the way we procure weapon systems. We're always the way our system works, the way our bureaucratic system works, where the speed of weapons procurement works. We're always a decade behind in fighting the last war. Whereas China, we have what did Rumsfeld say? You go to the war, the army you have. We have the army. China's building an army specifically dedicated to defeating the United States of America. That is their strategic outset. Take hypersonic missiles. So if our whole power projection platform is aircraft carriers and the ability to project power that way strategically around the globe. And yeah, we have a nuclear triad and all of that, but a big part of it. And if 15 hypersonic missiles can take out our 10 aircraft carriers in the first 20 minutes of a conflict, what does that look like?
Yeah.
I mean, and if they've already got us by the balls economically, which you pointed out very well, with our grid, culturally, there's plenty of elite capture going on around the globe. I mean, and then microchips and everything. Why do they want Taiwan? They want to corner the market completely on the technological future. We can't even drive our cars without the stuff we need out of China these days. I mean, they have a full spectrum, long-term view of not just regional but global domination, and we have our heads up our asses.
Yeah.
And that.
All right. So I see we've got Kaj has joined us, Kaj Larson and Jason Redman. Kaj, could you introduce yourself to the Survival Dispatch News audience since we haven't had you on before?
Yeah, Chris, thank you. And John, honored to be here. I'm Kaj Larson. I spent 13 years in Naval Special Warfare as a SEAL officer, and I'm proud to be here with my Frogmen brothers, who are also my good friends, and to support Pete.
That's awesome. Good to see you, by the way, Jason. Did you get your Wi-Fi squared away?
Yeah, Chris, I tell you what, man, if I was a comm guy running this place, I would have fired everybody. I need to bring in a team of comm guys. I need a mobile comm team to run this place.
That's funny. I don't know if y'all caught Pete's comments with Sean Ryan there, but I'm going to go to Bill first, and then whoever else wants to chime in can. So, Bill, is there credence, and I'm not suggesting there isn't, but is there credence to the fact that China could potentially take out all 10 of our carriers with 15 hypersonic missiles in the first 20 minutes of a confrontation?
Well, I have some concerns with China. The last thing I think any intelligent person wants is a military conflict with China. I don't think the Chinese people want it. I don't think we want it. I do think there's some real concerns with China, some of their overt activity. Recently, you can say, hey, the Chinese spy balloon was a huge flex. The Pentagon completely folded. You can say the fact that they recently cyber hacked into telecom communication companies in our nation, gathering sensitive information regarding politically connected individuals was a huge oversight that wasn't accounted for. You could also say, hey, look what they recently cyber hacked into the U.S. Department of Treasury. So they're taking overt actions that are actually hostile to American interest. I do think the current leadership in the Pentagon absolutely sent the wrong message when they let a spy balloon overtly gather intelligence information over sensitive military installations. No, I don't want war with China. I don't think anybody does, but I think we need to. I love technology. I think technology can advance humanity as a whole. That's what I'm rooting for. But I'm not naive, and I think we have to prepare for the possibility. And the leadership in the Pentagon has absolutely failed in really addressing this.
Well, appreciate that, Bill. Rob, I'm going to go to you next. And actually, Bill set the question up nicely. How do we get to this point where we're essentially behind the 8 ball as far as our military relative to China's military?
Well, I'm not 100% sure that I agree that we are weaker than China. I think we are stronger, but we've got some serious things that we need to clean up. And a lot of that, I think, is good intention, and it turns into bureaucracy, and it turns into red tape and classification issues and software stacks on top of software stacks that don't make any sense. And I feel like we need to take a look at how we do business, from a core value system to how we operate quickly, looking at speed over security. And are we prepared for a first world conflict, right? We do what it is that we've done in the past over and over. Can we adjust to a threat like that? And I think that we can do better. I think we can do a lot better. And the last, in 2021, when Austin pulled us out of Afghanistan, I mean, that was just disgusting in every way. And in fact, there were a lot of veterans. I don't want to go too in depth on this part, but there are a lot of veterans that took that very harshly, personally, as well as, our kids are never going to forget the images of the Afghanis hanging off of the airplanes as they were taking off, with zero regard for the relationships that we built over the last couple of decades. So, how do we restore that trust? I think that's something else to look at. And that begins with leadership that we can get behind, that we can unify behind, and, bring up retention rates. Something where we're not afraid that, we're going to be judged based on our gender or have to take some funky jab. And it's just weird these days. So I believe Pete can restore a lot of the sanity back to what we're doing and clean up a lot of the things. We'll see how much we can actually get done. But I absolutely think that we are still the leading fighting force, but we have some work to do.
Well said, Rob. The old adage that a fish rots from the head down comes to mind as you were describing the current leadership that we've had for the past 4 years. Kaz, we'll go to you next. I'd like to get your input on Rob and Bill's comments with regards to the leadership in general.
Yeah, I think to draft in Rob's wake a little bit here, he really named the challenge of the modern Pentagon and the modern national security apparatus. There's this paradox that over the last 20 years, 2 decades of wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, the gentleman that you see on screen, we have increased lethality to become the greatest fighting force the world has ever seen. At the same time, we've also increased bureaucracy. And as we face this new mission set and these new evolving challenges, Bill obviously talked about China, that's the preeminent one, but a series of global conflicts. We're at greater global conflict around the world right now, especially in Africa, in places like Africa, low intensity conflicts, than at any other time in modern history, right? So we have a whole new set of challenges. You've seen the emergence of new technologies like robotics. So how do we have a nimble and a Defense Department and national security apparatus that can pivot to that? And I think the answer is that the status quo is not going to work for us. In the clip you had before, you saw Pete talking about the nuclear triad. That's a concept that's been with us from the 60s. We need a disruptive leadership in the Pentagon and in the annals of national security. We're willing to challenge the orthodoxy, challenge conventional thinking to make us prepared for war fighting for the next conflicts.
So, Jason, I have a video pulled up with you speaking, and I'm going to play it in a minute and have you speak to it, and Jeff as well. But, Cash, before we move on, it's interesting that you would mention Africa. So, one of the weaknesses that I was made aware of a couple years ago was there was a peacekeeping mission in Africa, and the Chinese were in charge of it. I can't recall the name of the country, but they lost essentially against some villagers because they were paralyzed. Nobody wanted to make decisions is the gist of what I got out of that. How significant is the lack of confrontational experience for the Chinese, in your opinion?
Well, so I would address that in two separate parts. I would say the issue of what I describe as Chinatown, Africa. The gentlemen on screen know that my last command was Special Operations Command Africa, so I think a lot about what's happening on the content. The Chinese presence in Africa is a strategic imperative for the United States. They are prolific and dominant on the continent. Specifically to Chinese military fighting capability, which I think is the latter part of your question, that is a more complex question. And I think as the Russians found in Ukraine, there is a difference between having a big and robust military and having a big and robust military that has fought a war recently, right? When all of us started our careers, circa 2000s, when in the early parts of the wars, we were not nearly as effective and efficient at war fighting, as we are now after 2 decades of reps and getting really good. So I think if China were to engage in an actual shooting conflict, hot war, as they say, I think they would be prepared for a very steep learning curve.
That's good to hear. I mean, I don't know why Bill said all that stuff about you before we went live, but you seemed pretty astute to me. You know, I'm just kidding.
He just wants to arm wrestle in the mud like everyone else.
There you go. All right, we're gonna pull up this video that Jason posted.
Guys, the United States military exists for 3 reasons: defend the homeland, strength to deter our enemies, 3, fight our wars should we have the need to do it. Guys, it is not a social experiment. And that's what Pete Hegseth believes in and what he stands for. And guys, there is a smear campaign going on because there are people that don't want Pete Hegseth as the
Send professional invoices.
They want to continue this idea of a social experiment for the military, a weakening of the military, a degradation of our capabilities. Guys, there's a smear campaign going on that says that Pete's an alcoholic, he's a womanizer, all these things. Guys, I was with Concerned Veterans for America from 2016, 17, I think even going back to 2015. During my time with CVA, I never saw Pete drunk. I never saw Pete chasing after women. I saw a guy who was leading, who was talking about the greatness of America and who created a great organization. I believe he will do the same for the Department of Defense. We need somebody like Pete. If you're a veteran and you want to march with us, we've got a bunch of prominent Navy SEALs who are going to be marching on Washington. Click on the link in my profile and you can join us. There's a sign up link there and you can join us. We need to defend Pete. We need to defend America.
Well said, Jason. By the way, for our new listeners, you can go to patreon.com/survival dispatch and download the situation report /brief for this episode. And it has links to everything, including Jason's video that just played. Jason, a quick question for you. Why do you think that Pete Hegseth has been under attack?
Well, I think there's been a division somewhere along the lines in America. You have individuals who believe in the, woke. In their minds, I think it's an idealistic, equal. I'm not quite sure. I don't fully understand it, in my opinion. I'm of the opinion that I believe in freedom for you to be able to do things, but at the end of the day, there are certain areas that it just doesn't apply, in my opinion. The military being one of those biggest things, law enforcement, fire. There are criteria and standards that we must uphold. And within those standards and criteria, race, creed, color, gender, religion, all these different things don't apply. because at the end of the day, it's your ability to do the job. For the military, we listed those things. And I think that's one of the biggest things. I think there are people that recognize Pete is going to enforce that. He's going to bring it back to where we have accountability, that we have standards. We hold these standards, that we're going to move away from the individual mindset that right now is kind of pervading the military and get back to the team unit mission accomplishment mindset that has nothing to do with any of the woke ideologies or the social experiment that's been going on in the military. You know, China is a massive threat. And part of the problem is I think we've emboldened China. China's always been bold. China's always been playing the long game. They have slowly penetrating and expanding around the world, from their expansion off their coastline into the islands they're creating. Obviously, Kaz talked about everything they were doing in Africa. China basically took over the Panama Canal from us when I was down there. And a lot of that, in my opinion, has to do with the military operates either out of a position of strength or weakness. And for the last several years, we have operated out of a position of weakness from many things, from everything from Obama setting red lines in the sand against Bashar Assad in Syria and then the Russians, and then not stepping up to that when chemical weapons were used, to the biggest, most egregious thing I've seen in my entire lifetime, which Rob talked about, was the withdrawal from Afghanistan, that debacle, which is emboldening China, and in my opinion, many of our adversaries around the world, the Iranians, the Houthis, North Korea, all of them are looking at us and saying, hey, America, they're not stepping up. They're not building their military back as well as they should be. And if they're pushed, they're not stepping up. And I think there are people that are afraid of Pete getting back in position and bringing the military back to what it should be. We're strong, operating from a position of strength, and we're willing to step up if we have to.
Very well said, Jason. Between our previous conversation and this one, that one word, lethality, keeps coming up over and over again. And a few of my friends, including John, have essentially said, if it's not related to lethality, it shouldn't even be under consideration. So pretty impressive that everybody I speak to who's a military veteran uses that word consistently. Jeff, I'll go to you. I'd like to get your impressions of Pete Hegseth, why he's under attack in your opinion, and what he's going to do to benefit us. Because I understand from John Thune now, he's saying that there's enough votes to confirm him.
Yeah, so I personally believe Pete is under attack because of his combat experience, and like many of the generals and admirals and people that have led at the highest levels of the Pentagon, they were 04s when 9/11 happened. So they never saw combat. They never fired a bullet in war, and they didn't have to put tourniquets on their brothers. And it's different when you're there and you're fighting in the trenches and receiving the Bronze Star for Valor like Pete did. And so when Pete knows that how important lethality is, while other people have listened to the politicians and said, we're going to focus on being woke, we're going to focus on DEI, and we've seen like all the problems in the military that have come with that. And Pete doesn't just fall in line with all that because he's focused on combat effectiveness, on what's best for the overall picture, and also all the things that have been done strategically against the United States and Africa and Ukraine and everywhere else. Pete is looking big picture, focusing on the important things that are going to win the war, and not just what's going to get him the next promotion, because he's not looking at this as the next promotion. He's looking at this as a way to fix the military wholly.
And that's an amazing commentary, Jeff. I really appreciate that. I'm going to pull up the next article here and get going. Okay, so I'm assuming that y'all saw Pocahontas attack Pete Hegseth. She sent a letter to him, actually, claiming that his tattoo, Latin for God's will, makes him a potential insider threat. You were also removed from President Biden's inauguration because of concerns that you're an insider threat. Reports that your Deuce Vault tattoo was a Christian expression associated with right-wing extremism. We cannot have a defense secretary whose fellow service members feel concerned enough to report this as a potential insider threat. John, I'm going to hand over the reins to you, and you can take this one.
I don't know how I feel about jumping in with all of these honorable men. I just worked on fighter planes, but I think that really what this is it's just the classic leftist attack to try and drum up some kind of whistle, silent whistle that they want to get everybody to think, oh, well, this person's just a white nationalist or a right-wing extremist, any of that kind of stuff. Nothing could be further from the truth. Pete is very outspoken about his faith. He has been, and there's no there with this, and it's just the classic tactics of the left to try and diminish somebody based off of their faith, because really the left is faithless at this point and full of people that are just full of corruption, and they want to push a communist or a progressive agenda on our military, and that's really what it boils down to.
John, I'm going to pull up a little bit more on Elizabeth Warren's unwarranted attack on Pete. So Warren also attacks Hegseth's support for traditional American values such as the right to bear arms as peddling conspiracy theories and making claims that are devoid of reality. Just remember, everything woke turns to, and I can't believe she would go that direction, but I mean, what do I know?
It's really it's really interesting when you look at the history of Elizabeth Warren. She was a Harvard professor, taught for years, and that actually wrote some books that were somewhat almost right-leaning, the two income trap, all of that stuff early in her career. But she has been infested by the woke mind virus and wants to be so involved in the identity politics that she made up the fact that she is Native American when she's 1,024th. I think my golden retriever has more Native American in her than Elizabeth Warren does. And these people are just they're hacks, and they have been propped up into a political party that is a shell of what it used to be. When I was a kid, my uncle was a Democrat and lifelong Democrat. He recently switched over in the last decade because he saw how bad the Democratic Party was, and it's full of this stuff. So that's the reality of it.
So I'm not trying to oversimplify it, and I'm going to go to you next, Bill. But ironically enough, this is kind of a funny comparison, but it speaks volumes. The people who think men can get pregnant are calling Pete Hegseth an extremist. Our Pete, their Pete. I mean, I don't know. Again, I'm trying not to oversimplify, but it seems like it's basically their ideology, which is anti-middle-aged white male, versus the insanity of 378 different genders and all the stuff that goes with that.
I got it, Chris. That comparison. It definitely shows a distinction in values. Now, I think I want to be sincere with you. One of the things when I think about the January 6th movement is what happened is the left was able to use that as a huge propaganda ploy to really discredit the message that a lot of those individuals have. There's questions regarding the electoral process. And I think that the voting machines can't be compromised. I don't think any rational thinker should feel safe with that thought process. And the reason why I'm trying to bring this up, because I want to focus on the target right now. And it's important to me to kind of not get focused on some things like, a senator that everybody doesn't hold much credit or anything that could discredit our message. And I got a bunch of war heroes right here with us in this lineup, and I want to take advantage of that. And right now, our nation is in trouble. Our nation's in serious trouble, and we need to focus on really what's important. And I don't want anyone to ridicule us or our statements by kind of saying we're kind of comical or we're radical, because that's not true. We're all men and women who love this country. We believe in the values of the Constitution: life, liberty, due process, equality, freedom, and freedom of expression. And that's one of the things we're going to do to advocate for Pete Hegseth, because the military, the Pentagon's lost its way. When you give trillions of military equipment to to jihadists, you've lost your way. You've lost your way. There's got to be accountability for that. There's mass corruption. They failed 7 audits in a row. They can't account for over $124 million. They're giving billions of dollars of aid to jihadists in Afghanistan. There's all types of real serious issues that I think we got to stay tracked on. And so that's what we're doing. We're going to practice this. We're doing something historic here, Chris, and you're helping us. There's never been a group of SEALs and veterans that have gone to Washington, D.C. and engaged in our First Amendment right to free assembly and free speech to say, hey, we're the warfighter class. This decision's so important. We realized, look, I've realized I'm a lawyer. I've never seen a greater threat to, and I used to be a Democrat. I've ran for a Democrat for state office in New Jersey. I can't support the Democratic Party. When you realize that I'm a lawyer, they use lawfare to attack political opponents. And when that's one of the scariest things that we've ever had as far as really realistically undermining the preamble of the Constitution, and we the people decide who we want to be in elected office. Our nation right now, the state of affairs, there's so many adversaries. The weapon systems are so sophisticated now and portable. The fact that the Pentagon, one of the greatest failures of the Pentagon is to speak up against the open border, because that's a huge threat to us. We're going to talk about China controlling its geographic strategic points like the Panama. The Pentagon was asleep at the wheel too. But the fact that the open border and the high threat assessments that we have, you have various intelligence agencies, various terrorist networks. That open border was a national threat to us. Now, you can say, hey, it's small symptoms like what happened when you don't properly vet people, when you get people burned alive in a subway because they weren't properly vetted, become a day over here. That's minor comparison to what could happen with the portable and advanced technology that our adversaries have across that open border. And the Pentagon put us all at risk by not addressing it. These are serious fucking problems. We got massive corruption, massive fraud, waste, and abuse. Look, the Pentagon has got issues that need to get addressed. Now, let's be sincere. One of the things that they were focused on, in my opinion, is that in a lot of our agencies, agencies were focused on negating their political opponents, right? White conservative males primarily, and not focused on real national security threats. And so we need to refocus, and for all of us, because here's the truth. The technology and advanced weapon and portable weapon systems that could have got across that border, you saw what happened in 9/11 when we were asleep at the wheel. You saw what happened to Israel on October 7th when they were asleep at the wheel. It's time for us to wake up, and we got it. And that's why you have hundreds of SEALs and veterans coming to Washington, D.C. And Chris, you're one of our biggest tools. You're letting us on here all the time. As many veterans and SEALs as possibly can come to Washington, D.C. to help us in the confirmation hearing, because we're going to stack it with veterans in the confirmation hearings, and we're going to have veterans with American flags and patriots. We're going to follow Martin Luther King's example and hold the moral high ground. What I want to ask everybody who's concerned with Americans right now, we got to stop the comical stuff. No more Warren and her nonsense. No more sidetracked and comical stuff comparing somebody, a man that thinks he's a woman. That stuff don't matter now. What matters now is getting the adults in the room and leadership positions that have the courage and vision to correct course what we need to happen.
Very well said, Bill. We've got an interview between Mark Levin and Pete Hegseth coming up, and I'm going to pass that off to Jason and Jeff in a minute. But I want to go to Rob and Kaj first and get your comments on this irregular warfare that China's been waging against us for decades. I would argue that this chasm we're seeing between the left and right is a direct result of that irregular warfare. And General Valley, we're fortunate to call him a friend of Survival Dispatch. He agrees with that as well. But I'd like to hear your opinion first, Rob, and then Cash, on the irregular warfare being waged against us by China. I mean, there's some people right now who say we're already in World War III and have been in World War III for years. It's just different.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Chris. They say that right now is the only moment in time that we will be able to recognize AI. As it evolves, it's just going to be so embedded that it's undetectable, not by humans. And so what does that mean? What do these modern technologies mean? We've seen drones, we've seen biological warfare being developed for decades, and we don't have to go into the most recent experiments, what I think it was. But then also, what about all this computer stuff? How much of our infrastructure is based on microchips and servers? And I mean, we don't hardly do anything with paper. And I remember wondering what was going to happen when they took down the elephant cages. We have to have our backup strategies to be able to make comms and effectively move and shoot, for lack of a better word, and operate once those systems are threatened. What about our satellite positioning system? What about all of our modern communication systems? When I think about what the next major conflict like that might be, I wonder who is the most advanced with this technology? Who is ahead of the ball? And those questions kind of keep me up at night sometimes, because I don't really have a fully clear answer. What do you think, Coach?
Well, I think if something is keeping Rob up at night, it's a big deal, because he's the biggest proponent of sleep hygiene there is, and he's actually done great work for our community. So that it really means something that we should be concerned about. But, I would frame it this way, Chris. In every conflict, there's a defining technology. So in Ukraine, I would argue that drones really define the technology and change the nature of warfare forever. And then in the next great conflict after that, the Israel-Palestine conflict, I would make the argument that it wasn't drone warfare, although drone was important, but that war was actually occurring not on the front lines in Rafah or in Gaza or any of these places, but on the headlines of the New York Times and the Washington Post and the Wall Street Journal and Der Spiegel in Germany. And in that battle space, Israel was losing, no matter what they were doing kinetically on the battlefield, right? When you have gay students on the NYU campus, flying Hamas flags and protesting, Israel is losing the narrative war to Hamas, right? And I think that is relevant to the conflict or the tension that we have with China, right? They have TikTok, one of the most popular social media platforms there's a lot of talk about TikTok, but no matter what, they have an ability to shape the narrative battle space in the US. And so I would bring this back to Pete, right? This is one dimension of what I call the new battle space and the information dominance battle space, right? Who would be a better person than Pete, who's had this extraordinary successful career, who understands the media shaping environment, to help lead the US military in this new battle space? I would make the argument that Pete's an extraordinary person. So it's not about, how many ships you can build necessarily. That stuff's important, but warfare, as everybody on this, Zoom has said, warfare is changing and evolving rapidly, and we need people who are adept enough and understand other dimensions beyond traditional warfighting, in addition to all the other stuff that everybody said about, like, coming back to lethality and a focus on the mission.
Very well said, Cash. Just a couple points that I jotted down while you and Rob were speaking. In my opinion, we won the Second World War because of our industrial capacity. So we were able to take typewriter factories, turn them into gun factories, those sort of things. There was a Pentagon report last year that said that the Chinese have 300 times the shipbuilding capacity that we have. And I don't have anything to confirm the veracity of that report, but we've certainly handed them over a tremendous amount of intellectual property and SOPs and everything related to manufacturing. So I think back how that helped us in World War II, and it's concerning that China appears to be, ahead of us there. And then just a quick comment on the Israeli conflict, Gaza in particular. I don't know if you all are familiar with Admiral Robert Harward, but he's a friend of ours as well. Just a super, super guy. And when I first met him through Don Mann, who's another SEAL, Don and I have a couple TV shows that we do together. Admiral Harward said to me, Chris, when do you think we started using drones in, the military started using drones? I said, I don't know, maybe early 1990s, Desert Storm. And he said, no, you got to go back 4 decades past that. And his father was an admiral as well, headed up Project Gyrodyne. So these were remote control helicopters that had a 42-mile range that carried torpedoes that was to defend us against the 300 subs that the Soviets had. And then there's all kinds of stuff before that as well, like German drones that would go underneath tanks, those sort of things. Pretty amazing stuff. But I'm going to pull up this video, Mark Levin, Pete Hegseth talking, and then John, I'm going to hand it back to you to converse on it with Jason and Jeff. We still need a producer, by the way.
But it's very intriguing. It's compelling. It's the kind of book you can't put down. Pete, it's obvious you take this personally. You're very passionate about it. Tell us why.
Well, this is my generation of warfighters after 9/11. I served in Guantanamo Bay. I served a combat tour in Iraq, and I served a tour in Afghanistan. I also found what happened to me is what's happened to guys across our military, quietly and silently, whether it's vaccine mandates or being dubbed patriot extremists. You see, I was in the National Guard during the riots of George Floyd in Washington, D.C. in 2020. I was holding a riot shield outside the White House, Mark. It's surreal when you're in combat and then you're in America with the White House behind you and fellow Americans are throwing things at you. I served that. Then January 6th happened. Then my unit was designated to guard the inauguration of Joe Biden. I've served under Obama. I served under Trump. I served under Bush. Okay, we're going to guard Joe Biden. I had orders to go, Mark. I had orders to be a major there. Everyone had orders. We were all going. A day before I went, I got a call from the unit, and they said, stand down, Major. Stand down. We don't need you. I said, what do you mean you don't need me? Everybody has orders. No, we're good. We've got it covered. And light bulb went off right away. I said, this is not about that. They don't want me there. Is it because I work for Fox? Is it because I support Trump? What is it? Why am I disinvited? Why have my orders been revoked? Well, when I wrote the book, Mark, I got a chance to get the inside scoop from people that were involved. I was dubbed. I joined the military to fight Islamic extremists. I was dubbed by my own unit to be an extremist because of a tattoo, a religious tattoo I have on my chest. They said, no, we think you're a white nationalist. The tattoo has nothing to do with politics. It's a Christian faith religious symbol that I've had for a very long time. And so it was clearly, was it about religion? Was it about Trump? Was it about Fox? I don't know, but it was about politics. And the message was clear. Pete Hegseth, you're not welcome here to guard Joe Biden's inauguration. At that point, I said, I'm out. I'm out. I don't want any part of this institution. But my prayer is that patriots like us and a future president like Donald Trump can clean out woke generals, can change the way we train at our military academies, return the standards and accountability so that my boys, I end the book, Mark, with a letter to my 5 sons. There's a lot of people asking this question. Do you recommend that your kids serve? The reality is, if not patriots, then who? So my recommendation with trepidation is that they should, because we need patriots to serve. But it's our job, Mark, to clean house at the Pentagon. We have a Pentagon and a military worthy of their service and worthy of their sacrifice. What happened in Afghanistan was a huge stain on the institution of the military. We have to turn it around.
John, I'm going to pass it over to you. Pete Hegseth is so articulate. I just want to say that.
Yeah, well, I think that he points out something that is really a cancer growing in the upper echelon of the military, and it has been for years, and that is labeling people who are patriotic, who are men of faith, as extremists. And this kind of stuff is just a part of the playbook of this progressive woke mind virus that has infected the upper echelon of our military. And Jason, I'm going to let you speak to this first, because as warriors, and all of you guys are, as Bill said, just, guys that have given blood, sweat, and tears to this country. You've laid your lives on the line multitudes of times and on a daily basis at times. So how does it feel to know that the military will dub you an extremist based off of something like your faith or a tattoo that is tied to your faith?
Well, I think the problem is the left, and Elizabeth Warren was a perfect example of this. I mean, you have this idea that if it's offensive to me, that's not fair. I don't like it. So, which really should have nothing to do with our military. Once again, it comes back to a position of strength. If you look at any point in warfare, we've recognized that it was necessary. We needed strong men, not to downplay any of the women out there. We have some women that are great warriors, but we need a strong military presence, advanced equipment, and the ability to fight, and that ability to keep driving forward and enable that fight. Unfortunately, I think there's an ideology that exists on the left that feels like, hey, if we are nicer to these people, then ultimately they will like us, and ultimately they will stop with their advances, and we'll all just get along. And the problem with that ideology is man is flawed. Man, ultimately, we will tell you one thing and then do something totally different. I mean, what happened with Israel and Hamas was a perfect example. Israel gave Hamas the ability to live in Gaza and live in the West Bank. And man, did that just continue to break through? And how did Hamas fight? Well, they fought by embedding themselves in the city and using human shields. After the October 7th attack, Israel said, we're not going to tolerate this anymore. And they applied massive pressure, massive strength, and massive lethality. And a lot of people didn't like that. They were very upset with that. That offended them. But at the end of the day, it is strength and power that wins wars. And we either accomplish it before it ever happens by having that strength in place, by having strong individuals who are willing to step up and fight, or not having it, which puts you in that position of weakness, and now you're having to back up. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, you've always heard the adage, it's about having the attack dog, and nobody likes the attack dog, because the attack dog is mean. I know some of the dogs we had on missions. I remember one of the ones that wasn't mine. I think it was one of the guys, one of the tier 1 units, where they said that one of the dogs that as soon as they would bring that dog out, oftentimes he would bite dudes in the brain. He was so excited to get into the action. But at the end of the day, that was the dog they wanted, because that dog saved lives. We need a military, once again, led by an individual that understands that. And individuals who, on the left, if you don't understand that, that's fine, man. Go live your life. Enjoy your freedom. All of us fought for it. But at the end of the day, this military needs to be strong. Our positions need to be strong. Our technology needs to be strong. We need to be building up our next generation warfighters. Rob said it. It's not just the guys on the ground who have the ability to take the fight and kick down doors. Our next generation of wars are going to be AI technology and way more advanced than just the drone stuff we're seeing. So we need to be recruiting young Americans. I tell you what, it ain't guys like us. We're too dumb for that. It's these kids that are doing this, who have the ability to think, and pi and MC equals, MC square and stuff like that, who have the ability to stop some of the attacks that we're going to be facing in the future, which China is already planning for, to take out our infrastructure and our satellite systems and all these different things. That is the future of warfare. Pete Hegseth understands that. That's why we need it.
Yep. We need revenge of the nerds in the military. So I would, so Jeff, I would also say that in military and in leadership, decisive leadership is important, and we haven't seen any of that coming out of the upper echelon of the military. We're more concerned with learning about white rage and all this other stuff, as Millie said on the news a couple of years ago. But I think that really one of the biggest things that's lacking, and I think it's one thing that maybe President Trump sees in Pete Hegseth, is that he is decisive in what he wants to do and where he wants to go. So speak a little bit to that, why being decisive in leadership is so important.
Yeah, I'll tell you that they believed Pete was an extremist the same way they believe Elizabeth Warren was a Native American. They didn't want the Capitol defended. They had Nancy Pelosi shut down the National Guard from defending it. If Pete was there as the major in charge of the National Guard, he would have protected the Capitol. He would have been decisive, used his leadership, and kept everyone out of there. But instead, they came up with a bogus excuse about him being an extremist. They got him out of there. They shut down the National Guard, didn't let it defend the Capitol. And then they had 20 plus undercover FBI agents pretend they were these rioters that riled up the crowd and got everyone to go inside the Capitol, most of which were like pretty well mannered, walking around like it was a tour. And so they knew if Pete was there, he would have been a leader the same way he was in Afghanistan, the same way he was in Iraq, the same way he was on Fox News, the same way he is when he's swimming with us in the Hudson River. And his first time doing it, he had never swam with fins before. He honestly struggled, but he dug deep and just kept going and made it, and was very gracious and humble at the same time. And it's really great to see all those sides of Pete becoming a friend of his. And that's exactly what we need, and that's why he wasn't allowed to be there on that day.
Yeah, well said, John. John, we've got a short video, Senator Jim Banks, 20 some odd seconds. I'm going to bring it up and play it, and then you can go to Bill and Rob again.
I fully support the Hegseth. He is eminently more qualified than Secretary Austin, who's in the job, who disappeared on the job, who instructed the disastrous, deadly withdrawal of Afghanistan and created a woke political mess at the Pentagon that Pete Hegseth is going to clean up. Pete is a decorated combat veteran, served in both Iraq and Afghanistan. He knows what's at stake. I fully support him. He's going to be great at the job.
So before you roll with that, John, what I'd really like to hear from Bill and Rob in particular is their thoughts on Austin just disappearing for whatever it was, 5 or 6 days, didn't inform anybody, didn't hand over the chain of command. But take it away, John.
Yeah, it's so sad to watch our military, who has been on the top military in the world for decades, and to see it being systematically, in my opinion, sabotaged by woke ideology, and seeing all of the misfires and out just disasters of the Afghanistan pullout, the focus on DEI and all of this other stuff. So with this big mess that has been created, it shows you how poor leadership how quickly it can destroy something. And so, Bill, I'm going to turn it over to you to speak to, where do we go from here, and what can we do as far as turning this Titanic around, I guess.
Well, there's a variable of different influences that will increase your probability of survivability and victory in war. There's no second place. Technology is absolutely one of those. Another one is discipline. And you can't have discipline when you don't have accountability. And I think that's one of the big issues that we have here. Look at the horrible withdrawal from Afghanistan. The only officer I know who's been accountable in any such way is Stu Stiller. And because he publicly spoke out about it in uniform, right? So you don't have any accountability. You look at in the Roman times, if you fell asleep on watch, they killed you. Right? So nobody fell asleep on watch. And so what's happened is you have mass corruption in the Pentagon. You have mass fraud, waste, and abuse in the Pentagon. You have huge, dismal failures, and there's no accountability. So that's the first thing we need to do is we have to have accountability. All these decision makers who were responsible with the withdrawal in Afghanistan, they should be fired. They should be fired. Anyone who had any type of decision making regarding leaving trillions of dollars in military equipment to the hands of our enemy, they should be investigated. Their financial statements should be investigated. Any offshore accounts should be investigated. All their investments should be investigated. All their text messages, phone, and email traffic should be investigated, because there's no way that much military equipment got the hands of somebody else and somebody inside didn't receive some type of financial gain to it. You can just look at Hunter Biden and Burisma. Burisma gave Hunter Biden millions of dollars for a reason, and that was a great investment in a part of Ukraine. Now, he got financial gain from it. I believe there's huge financial motivators that influence some of this terrible decision making that was counter to American interest. The first thing that we need to do is we need accountability, we need investigations, and there's a lot of leadership in the military and the Pentagon that should be fired.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. In the business world and the civilian world, if you're failing that bad that you failed 4 audits in a row, something needs to be shaken up. And I think it's the same way in the government. We can't allow these unelected bureaucrats to destroy an institution that's so important. Rob, I'm gonna let you speak really quick to this as well, and talk about how important it is that we have a vibrant military with the correct technology, especially with the advent, as you spoke of earlier, AI, and that within a couple of years, I would say, honestly, we could see this year where there are deep fakes, AI deep fakes that show people doing things that they actually did not do. I think we're on the cusp of that happening with the stuff that I see flowing out on social media. Is there going to be a point where we can't believe video, in all honesty, video evidence? But speak to that in the military and how that stuff is dangerous, and we have to be ahead of it, because if we're not, the enemy's going to have the upper hand on that.
Yeah, that's a very scary dystopian future, one in which AI controls things beyond our awareness. And I reflect on the recent changes in AI with a heavy gravity towards who's pulling the strings, right? What does this mean for us? What is the first sentient computer being? How is that defined? How does that change human rights? Who's controlling things? And so it is kind of scary. But I'll say that, I kind of want to speak on the economic strength of the United States. And when we look at the United States as a whole, we've got a spending problem. And so when we look at some of the initiatives that Trump is taking on, Pete falls into a larger plan, right? So if it hasn't been said out loud yet, our national debt is somewhere around 37 trillion. And the way that we get into debt with the Federal Reserve, this private organization that we ultimately don't have a lot of daily control over, they will change the interest rate based on a number of different factors. And so if we want to borrow money from them, the goal is to borrow at a very low interest rate. And so when we took out our last round of debt, which, by the way, I think we're running something like a $1.7 trillion deficit right now. So that means that we're spending more than we're bringing in. And tariffs could be one solution for that. Solving some of the spending problems is probably a better look. But when we have, billions of dollars that we're giving literally to Taliban, to Ukraine, to all these different initiatives, how can we justify that when we have this tremendous amount of debt that we're accruing? So much so that I'm not even sure, looking at the numbers, how we're going to pay for, let's call it $1 trillion debt payment. So if we have something like $1 trillion debt payment at the current rate that the feds are quoting us, and they say they're going to be able to drop the federal rate down, we don't even have the money to be able to make that payment. So where are we going to see cuts? So the reason I bring that up is because when we hone in on the national defense budget, it's less than $1 trillion. I think the new budget just got approved at somewhere around, what was it, 885 billion. How much of that goes to stuff that benefits us, to this new AI research, to drone research, to biological research? How do we defend these things? and how much of it goes to old world defense contractor relationships, right? I think we're sitting somewhere around 70% goes out to contracts with private defense companies, and maybe less than a third of that actually goes to our personnel, our payroll, our active duty reserve civilian salaries. So when I look at this problem, I'm thinking, okay, if we can't make the national debt payment, what's going to happen? And most likely they will try to, if they don't solve for this mathematical equation, they're going to try to print more money. They're going to try to borrow more money, print more money into circulation. What does that do? That causes inflation. And the only real way that I've seen that they can get the feds to immediately drop the interest rate, which changes the amount that we owe, is to create some type of catastrophe, some type of an emergency. And that's not the path we want to go down. So what are our options? You know, hyperinflation, some type of crazy thing that they stir up to put us into a state of panic. I don't want any of those outcomes. And so in saying that, the whole point of my commentary here is that we need somebody that is in alignment with our administration that can cut out the crap and get down to what do we need to be doing. And if we're not doing that stuff, we got to trim the fat. We got to trim the fat from a lot of these defense contractors that are just milking these contracts for decades now.
Well said, Rob. Hey, John, I've got a video a little over a minute long of Pete Hegseth speaking. I'm going to play that, and then we'll get Cash, Jason, and Jeff to weigh in on it.
Well, there's a lot to be done. First of all, you salute the commander-in-chief who got those 76 million votes and is going to chart the way. And I'll give him advice and counsel along the way. I'll just say what he told me. Return the Pentagon to the warfighters, Pete. Get in there and clean out all the social justice, politically correct garbage on top and get back to lethality, warfighting, accountability, meritocracy, and readiness. And guess what? 95% of the people in that building in the Pentagon and that wear the uniform, that's all they want to do anyway. And so when you return to that, it changes the culture of an institution that now stands up straight. You address that recruiting crisis. You address the retention crisis. Sean, I can't tell you how many families have reached out to me and said, my son or daughter wasn't going to join, and now they are after President Trump was elected and you were chosen to be SecDef. Same with retention. And then the rest of the world takes notice of that, Sean. So I'm not going to get ahead of the president on policy or what our posture will be, but we will be strong. And we will have peace through strength, as Donald Trump has said, and we will put America first. That's what he's asked me to do at the Pentagon, and that's my promise to the American people and our warfighters, led by President Donald Trump.
You can pick that up and run with it, John.
Yeah. I mean, for years, Kaj, we've had an issue with retention in the military for years. Lots of people getting out, not finishing their 20 years or whatever, and just leaving because they saw all of this stuff. And I think that Pete there actually articulated a lot of the problems and a lot of the things that need to be fixed. But in your mind, of all of those things, what do you start with? What do you think is the most important thing there of what he just articulated?
I do believe that culture flows from the top. And part of the reason that all of us on this call who have both served and swam with Pete are so vociferous in our endorsement of him is because we believe he can set the right culture for the Pentagon. I mean, what's happening right now is kind of unprecedented, at least in my political lifetime, right? We just had the Army-Navy game and sorry, Army, right? Bad day for Army, right? But at the end of the day, that inter-service rivalry, right, is just a mask for what we really are, is one team, one fight. And what you're seeing on this call of one team, one fight is just like a baby indicator of what I think is going to happen under Pete's leadership. When can you remember 100 SEALs marching, multiple squadrons worth of SEALs marching to a confirmation hearing on the Senate? In my mind, it's never happened, right? SEAL teams, we just celebrated our birthday on January 2nd, and I can't remember another time when you had an inter-service mobilization of support for a political nominee. And I think that bodes really well for resetting the culture of the Pentagon back to all of the lethality and warfighting that Pete talked about.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that's very well said and very very important. Jason, I'm going to go to you with kind of the same question. Of those things in your mind, where should we start with this this agenda to turn this ship around?
I think Pete's a breath of fresh air because he's a reset. And I think we need a reset in we need a reset in politics. We need a reset in our country, and we need a reset in the Department of Defense. You know, so many of our former secretaries of defense either came up the ranks as senior generals like General Mattis, and no disrespect to General Mattis, I have tremendous respect for him, or they came from the military industrial complex in some way or some sort of business that's tied to it, which means their connections, their relationships, their social networks are all tied to that, which keeps them continuing and influence to do the same things we've done before. There is so much fraud-based and abuse happening within the government. We look at so many of the weapon systems programs. I believe it's the F-35 program that just is so far over cost, billions of dollars over cost, with many of our fighter pilots and many of the guys who actually would fly it say that this isn't the best aircraft. Why are we continuing to put money down this direction? You know, we need to be making sure that we have a leader that's coming in with a fresh set of eyes, who has the conviction and the knowledge to reach out and say, what truly we cut? What should we cut that's not connected to relationships, who doesn't have people saying to him, oh, Pete, you're our boy, man. How can you cut that program? You know, we supported you. You know, that didn't happen. Pete didn't come up through that. And I think that's truly what we need. Once again, to get the Department of Defense back focused on, we need the most relevant, impactful, lethal warfighting systems for the current wars we're waging. And we need to be putting a lot of money into recruiting and training next generation warfighters so that we're ready for all that. And I think Pete understands that and appreciates that. Pete is the reset. It's why we need it.
Yeah. Well said. Very, 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 very true there. And Jeff, you know, one thing that he spoke of in that, it kind of stuck out to me when I joined the military back in 2001, late 2001. When I went to basic training, with just about every race you could imagine. There was diversity in the military already. If you guys, I always kind of laugh when people talk about diversity in the military, because that's existed since for decades, in all honesty. And I'm sure you guys all had a similar experience, and for them to focus on that is I think ridiculous. And they probably have a large amount of the money spent on those defense contracts or the defense budget for, you know, stuff like diversity and inclusion and all this stuff. And really, you know, the military is probably one of the most diverse things in the country, because you know, we had every possible race you could imagine in our unit at the time that I joined. But similar question, as far as where you kind of see what we should be going and where we should be going at this, what are your thoughts there, Jeff?
Yeah, I loved what Pete said about 95% of the people in the Pentagon are all great, but it's like the 5% that we need to fix. There's been a lot of yes men along the way who just fed into this woke and DEI agenda and started judging people not on how well they do their job, but on the color of their skin and a lot of other weird things. And even putting people who want to have surgery and get remove their genitals and everything else, and then they're not even deployable. What is the point of having someone like that in the military? There's really no point. We need to be focused on lethality, winning wars, being strong. Also putting women into special operations when they get put into these programs just to quit the first day, and it doesn't make our special operations better. It just clogs up and takes room from people who are more deserving to be there, but because they're being told from politicians and admirals and generals who are yes men, they go ahead and do that. So to return to where we were, before those days is going to be a really good thing, and it's going to fix all the problems along the way. And then you can mix in some AI and things into the systems as well, where it doesn't need to just go through the bureaucracy. It can go through without even needing some people.
John, I've got the next video of Pete Hegseth speaking. It's about 2 minutes long. But before that, just a quick comment on your comments, Jeff. We've had a number of people on the show who are either active duty military or formerly, they're veterans. And every last one of them has said the 15,000-ish people going through this transgender transition stuff are non-deployable assets. So it begs the question that you just asked, why are we focusing on that? Why are we spending money on it? Doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I don't think it contributes to lethality, right, Jeff?
Yeah, you can't join the military if you have schizophrenia. And then if you have the surgery, 40% of people that have the surgery attempt suicide anyway, because imagine you already have a mental problem and then you cut off the best part of your body and you think it's going to solve all your problems, and now your problems just got 100 times worse. And these are people that you're going to then put in charge of pressing buttons and making, lethal decisions, but they can't even deploy at the same time. So why are we doing that? It's so against the, having every bit of common sense.
It's worth mentioning up until 2018, the World Health Organization, which I'm not a big fan of, but transgenderism was classified as a mental illness up until 2018. And then when this whole, trying to ram this crap down our throat started, they mysteriously took it off the list of mental illnesses. But anyway, we've got this video here with Pete speaking with regards to Trump. It's really good.
People outside these walls, some of the press that are covering this, they don't understand the attachment that conservatives and freedom lovers have to Donald Trump, to the former president. They don't get it. They think it's some sort of a misinformation, cultish thing, cult of personality. Oh, they love the bravado. That's not what it is. I'll explain why we love them in one military analogy. I was a platoon leader in Iraq. I was an infantry platoon leader in the Army. And the one situation is the most dangerous situation that you don't want to find your platoon is what's called a near ambush. You're walking through a neighborhood and you walk into a near ambush, meaning the enemy has the high ground, they're concealed, and you're stuck in what's called the kill zone on the X, and they've got you pinned down. Rifles, grenades, everything. You're right there in the kill zone. You don't want to be there. You're dead if you're in the kill zone for the most part, unless you act, okay? The battle drill for being in the kill zone of a near ambush is definitely not crouch down and hope you survive, because it's never going to happen. Your only option is to immediately seek cover, immediately pop your grenade, throw it, and then charge toward the enemy that you still can't see. That's your only option if you want to survive. This is all metaphorically, of course, for the media out there. Right? Caveat necessary. It's your only hope. All right? Well, Republicans for decades, for years, have sat in the kill zone and said, just kind of like us. We're okay. We're not that bad. We're okay. We're nice behind our podiums, dressed up like this, hey, everybody, we're going to cut taxes just a little bit more. It doesn't work. Donald Trump said it's time to throw the grenades and charge at the enemy. That's why.
Yeah. So, Bill, in your thought process, I think his analogy is right, that people were just tired of the status quo. They want to change, and that's why they have such a connection to Donald Trump. And I think a lot of people have grown to have a connection to Pete as well, as they've gotten to know him over the last, since he was really, a lot of people knew him on the conservative side because of Fox News and all this stuff. But being able to see him come out of this, and even with his whole life basically exposed to the public, and the lies that have been told about him coming through and just saying, hey, I'm just going to keep going. I'm going to keep charging. No problem. And I think that's probably it. But I'm going to let you speak to that real quick.
Yeah, he didn't flinch. He didn't flinch. And, it kind of reminds me of before the election, all these polls come out and they're all trying to get you to flinch, to get you to not just show up. Oh, the election's short the other way. Don't even waste your time coming. The polls are telling you one thing. and media is telling you all this other stuff, and don't flinch. President Trump didn't flinch, and what did you have? The American people are tired of it. The American people spoke in this election. Every swing state, right? And in the states that the Democratic Party won, there were states where they didn't have voter ID, right? So the American people have had enough. Now, what we need to do is we got to be the adults in the room. We got to be and that's one of the things I liked about JD Vance. Because in my opinion, a lot of this woke ideology, they have two things. They believe they're mentally superior and they believe they're morally superior. Well, when we're the adults in the room and we're able to articulate our reasons, hey, look, this is my reasons really for supporting Pete. Number one, hey, guess what? He helped for years. The media was painting a negative picture of the SEAL community. And every year with Pete's help, we were able to send a positive patriotic message. Here's a bunch of SEALs coming from across the country, swim across one of the most dangerous rivers and dirtiest rivers in the nation. This represents who we really are to raise monies for Gold Star SEALs and their families. Number two, we raise millions of dollars. That doesn't happen without Pete. Here's the other thing. Look, when I was in Iraq, I was one of those guys who really believed we were making a difference. I was there in 2004, 2005. It's the first time women have ever voted. When it doesn't take a military tactician to realize the way we pulled out of there would be a huge power vacuum. And what that did is ISIS took over large areas of Iraq, a complete horror nightmare show. And it turned my stomach because I lost friends over there. I believed that we could have made a difference over there. When I saw it replay in Afghanistan, it turned my heart again. There's absolutely failed leadership in the Pentagon. The fact that, there's huge corruptions there. Any rational, reasonable person can see like 7 failed audits, millions and millions of dollars unaccountable. Like any reasonable person can see we're not extremists. We care about our country. And here's the truth. Look, that border was open. That's a national security concern for all of us. Nobody from the Pentagon spoke up. Panama, that's one of the most major commercial thoroughfares in the entire planet. We built the canal. China should not have control over the Pentagon. Over the canal. The Pentagon didn't speak up about that. They have bases on each side of it. Like the leadership in the Pentagon has failed us. That's why we want Pete in there. I love this country. That's why I'm advocating for Pete. And I'll be honest with you. I believe in liberty. Who am I to say what a man or a woman makes them happy? Who am I to say what somebody wants to do with their body? To be honest with you, on a personal level, I don't understand it, but who am I? I'm just one person. What makes me happy could not what necessarily makes other people happy. What someone does with their body, I could care less, as long as they're a consenting adult. I do have an issue with the military should be focused on on combat efficiency. If you're not deployable, then I don't think the military should be paying for any type of operation or procedure that's going to make you not an asset to contribute to the fight.
Yep. That's military readiness has to be the number one. You can't even deploy if you have a bad dental issue, what else? I don't know,
hey,
but chopping up your genitals. Yeah, chopping up your genitals might be a little bit more than a dental issue, but that's just me.
Can I make a 27 comment?
Jason.
Just from what the Marines have this summed up. Every single, and much respect to my crayon eating friends out there. I love you guys. The Marines have it. They know it. Every single Marine is a rifleman. It doesn't matter what job you have in the Marine Corps. First and foremost, you are a rifleman. I can't tell you how many amazing stories I have about the Marine Corps. I just got done about the Marines in Korea, and it didn't matter. Cook, radio man, grab a rifle. You're going to the front to fight the Chinese because you are a rifleman. The military has to get back to that mindset. Pete has that mindset.
Yep, absolutely. Well said, Jason. Well said. Rob, I'm going to go to you. And Bill actually mentioned something about the election. And I think it was such a resounding victory, a very, very big victory, and decisive as well in the election, to have congressmen and senators to basically say that, oh, yeah, we know that Donald Trump won this election fair and square. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. But we're not going to vote for your nominee for Secretary of Defense because of this or because of that. And what has to go into the psyche of playing politics over something that was so decisive and just being ridiculous, as far as threatening not to confirm Hegseth?
I really can't comment on the mindset of some of these people, because I don't know what strings are pulling these thoughts. I mean, it just is mind-boggling. But let's look at what we've got. Okay, we've got a solid president coming in. I've never been behind a president so much as I am Trump. And it's not just Trump. I mean, look at the dream team that comes with him. I've never went and voted for a team before. You know, you always have the one guy or the gal that's running for office, and you look at their politics and what they stand for. This is a whole team, and it's a dream team. I feel like every single person he picked out, not only did he learn from his first term in office, I feel like this crazy business with the second election that he went through, we don't need to get into that. That might have been a blessing in disguise, because he had 4 more years to reflect on the choices that he made in his first term. And now looking at the choices that he's made in his cabinet and the people that he wants to appoint, I mean, all of these folks are solid. And I think Pete is just another great choice. And when we see the alignment of everything coming together, I mean, between you and I feel like this is God's work, right? He's saving us. But when we look at all of the different pieces falling into place, sure, maybe the strings that are pulling these people that are saying these things initially have some play. But now that we're getting a little further down the road and they're seeing that, like, there's not really much choice in fighting this, because this is all coming together, one unified force, something that our entire country can get behind. And we might actually need to depend on that, right? Depending on what happens in the future, we don't know. But we need to have that military posture. We all hope and pray that we don't go into another major war, but we have to have that presence. We have to be ready. And I think some of the things that Pete's talked about that I like is the combat readiness, you know, being able to address the threat. Is that something that Austin is focused on in the last few years? I don't think so. And we can't necessarily blame Austin for all those decisions. I think a lot of it came from Biden, and a lot of it came from that administration that's sort of forcing him, because of deals that he made in the past, forcing his hand to make those poor decisions. But at the end of the day, it's his command, and he made those decisions. And I don't really think that that's putting us into a better combat readiness situation. Modern warfare, cybersecurity, space defense, and we already talked about AI. Are we ready for these threats? Are we at the leading edge? Because I really do believe we have the greatest country that's ever been created, the greatest freedom to be who you want to be and be as left as you want and express yourself with the First Amendment and be able to walk the streets and complain about things. I fight for those people as well, right? I think everybody should have those freedoms. There shouldn't be tyranny that takes that away from people. And so in order to do that, in order to maintain that, we have to have an elite fighting force. We have to hold that posture, whether it changes into more computers and drones or biological warfare, or we go back to trench warfare. We have to be the best, because we have to protect what we have here.
Well said, Rob. John, we've got one more video and then a couple just static articles after that. But this is 1 minute and 33. We'll play the whole video, but the first sentence is pretty important. John Thune has reportedly assured Trump in private that Pete Hegseth will be confirmed as SecDef.
There's a chance to course correct it but it would take a new Trump administration going after it really hard.
How would they correct it?
Well, first of all, you got to fire. You got to fire the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, and you got to fire this. I mean, obviously, you're going to bring in a new Secretary of Defense, but any general that was involved, general, admiral, whatever that was involved in any of the DEI woke shit, it's got to go. Either you're in for war fighting, and that's it. And that's the only litmus test we care about. You got to get DEI and CRT out of military academies, so you're not training young officers to be baptized in this type of thinking. And then, whatever the standards, whatever the combat standards were, say, in, 1995, let's just make those the standards. And as far as recruiting, to hire the guy that, did Top Gun Maverick and create some real ads that motivate people to want to serve. And there's lots of other ways in which you could identify who gets promoted and what, but there's an ethos change. I mean, there's a reason people don't want to serve, because they don't trust that their senior leaders are going to have their best interest in mind in combat. I know there were mistakes made on our tours all over the place, but I, at least for the most part, had a sense that my senior leaders were committed to the completion of the mission for the right reasons. And maybe there were strategic differences and all that other stuff, and it wasn't always perfect, but that trust is broken, and you have to reestablish that trust by putting in no nonsense warfighters in those positions who aren't going to cater to the socially correct garbage.
That is some powerful stuff. Go ahead.
Here's a funny fact. So the guy who produced Maverick, his name's Christopher McQuarrie. His brother is a team guy. So super patriotic, and obviously it shines through.
Yeah, and it's a far cry from the My Two Moms recruitment video that came out a couple years ago, and the other crap that was just, it had nothing to do with fighting a war. It was all woke ideology stuff. And Kaj, I'm going to go to you, because I think, kind of feeding off of some stuff that Rob said, and military readiness, and I think actually a bigger deterrent to actual war is having a very highly trained, highly prepared military that can act decisively at the level that needs to, the action that needs to happen at the time, at the level of lethality that needs to happen at the time. And when you have decisive leadership, training, and a force that is ready to go to war at a moment's notice, it actually deters war more than it actually causes it.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think there's a couple points here that I'd want to underscore. First and foremost, I was in Top Gun Maverick, right? And shocker, a SEAL in a movie. Nobody's ever heard of that before. But I actually completely agree that that kind of ethos that Pete was talking about is really good and can go a long way towards helping course correct on some of the things that we've been discussing on this podcast. What's also interesting is, you had Sean Ryan, another frogman, interviewing Pete in that clip. And there's a tremendous amount of wisdom right here, just within these 9 squares. And I think one of the things that Pete can do so effectively is harness that wisdom from people who have actually, walked a mile in combat boots. And I think at the very root core of it is something that you said, John, about readiness. Probably far and away the best way to ensure readiness in our fighting force is to reintroduce a culture of meritocracy, right? And this is nonpartisan, right? He said, let's just rewind the clock back to 1995. Well, let's not forget, Bill Clinton was president in 1995, right? And look, there's always a peace dividend, and he enjoyed some peace dividend in terms of an opportunity. And there was mistakes made, as Pete annotated, during every era, under every administration, under every flag, Republican or Democrat. So I actually think it's important to skew away from all the partisanship, even the funny memes about Pete Buttigieg, right? Look, I chuckle seeing Pete wearing a boob nipple shirt, but the truth is, as a country, Pete and Pete, they probably have more in common, because Pete Buttigieg was a Navy intel officer who served honorably in Afghanistan. We probably have more in common than we do that divides us. And I think part of the emphasis that's happening here with all of this grassroots movement from guys like all 9 of us on this call who are inspired to go out and support Pete is that we're saying look, the elections is over. Yes, we have a mandate. Yes, all that stuff. But like, let's get past all that shit and just get back to working together. When Jason, was downrange, kicking indoors, he didn't ask whether the guy in front of him was a Republican or a Democrat. Like, we just did the mission. And with Pete, even though like he has like a partisan lens and he's obviously a supporter of Donald Trump, I think at the core, us who actually know Pete, like, believe that his first principle is a focus on the mission. And I think that's why we're all behind him.
100%. I completely agree with that. And I would bring up a certain point on September 12th, 2001. People weren't so concerned about who was a Republican and who was a Democrat. We were worried about going back and kicking a little ass and getting back for what we just experienced as a country. So that's well said, Kaj, and I couldn't echo that more. Jason, I'll go to you and let you speak a little bit more on his plan for how he outlines, how we turn this thing around and in his eyes, what to do.
No, I mean, I love his plan, how he laid it out. I mean, how prophetic on the Sean Ryan show. I'm not sure he knew yet, obviously, or, Trump was running, but,
that episode was recorded a couple of days. In fact, I think Sean changed the title of it to Secretary of Defense nominee. I think it was literally days before he was nominated that came out. So it was really
obviously he didn't know that, how prophetic, for him to speak those words when he really was talking, little did he know he was talking about himself. But I love the idea, once again, we're getting back to, people get into, make no mistake, once individuals become flag officers, there is a level of politics to it. And there are some individuals that have to play the game, and they're still focused on war fighting and doing the best they can for the mission and the men. Admiral Losey was a great example of that. I'll give him as an example. During the time that they told basically the heads of special operations, you're going to incorporate women, Admiral Losey was the only one who said, I don't think this is a good idea. We are in the middle of fighting war, and our focus needs to be on war fighting. And this will be a distraction from that. Now, he did say, if you force me to do it, this is how I would do it. And he laid that out. Pete recognizes there are others who, unfortunately, they get on their political power train and they take advantage of it. I think there were individuals in the military who did that at the highest levels. And I think Pete recognizes, and it's the 5%. Like he said, 95% of the people that are in the Pentagon in uniform love this country. They're proud to be a part of the units they're in. They love the flag. And there's 5% that I think are using it for their own purposes. I think Pete wants to get rid of them. He wants to get us back to strength. He wants to get us back to making sure we are strong and able to defend our borders. And he wants to make sure that we are advancing our military into the future with all those things he said. So,
yeah, and really, to me, it sounds like it's kind of like when if you use the analogy of a football team that's been on a losing streak, and a lot of times, anytime that when I was involved in sports in high school, if we had a couple games we lost, and our coach would come in and say, okay, guys, we're stripping all of this fancy stuff out of the game. It's back to basics. It's back to the stuff that we know is going to win. And I think that's really what Pete is talking about, is it's getting rid of all of this stuff that has nothing to do with winning wars, nothing to do with being prepared for war. It's all of these, for lack of a better analogy, trick plays that you like to throw in, but he's trying to get back to the fundamentals. And Jeff, I'll let you speak to that, of like returning to just the foundational things that we know are, obviously we have to be innovative with all the new technology and stuff, but there are just some fundamental facts about fighting wars that really don't change a whole lot.
Yeah, one of the basics that we talk about all these things, but one of the biggest things we had to deal with in the Middle East, Iraq, Afghanistan, was the ROEs. And there was times we could go out, and if someone raised a rifle or weapon or anything to us, that we could obliterate them. And then there was times where we were literally going out, and it was like being handcuffed in war, because they would put such stringent ROEs on us, and the littlest thing could get us shut down. There was a mission in Iraq where we went out, killed a bomb maker terrorist who was going for a gun in the middle of the night in his house. And then Obama shut us down for a month. We couldn't leave the base for an entire month. And he paid $50,000 restitution to that terrorist family. And I don't see Pete and I don't see Trump doing that to us if we're in a battle with terrorists. And that's going to be one of the biggest basics that can be done from day one. And there's a million other things that can go with it, but just knowing that the military has your back when you're going over to war, and that if you kill a terrorist, they're not going to try to lock you up or anything else, the way they did with Eddie Gallagher too. So many things like that, giving us the best equipment, inspiring the next generation to want to go out and protect our country as well, and not that they're going to have to take something that they don't want to take that might be bad for them. I don't know, but like all those things come together when people make their decision about wanting to join our military and wanting to go to war, and about re-enlisting. Having someone with a lot of experience re-enlist is extremely valuable. You become a national asset once you have millions of dollars of training. And some people just get out because they don't like the way things are going. And if they're incentivized properly and they know the military and the president and the Secretary of Defense has their back, they're going to re-up, and the next generation is going to be recruited, the numbers are going to be met, and our country is going to be safe.
Yeah, well said, Jeff. John, I've got just a few static images to pull up, and then we'll give everybody parting words and wrap up chapter 1. But there's a screenshot of the recruiting video that you were mentioning. America on the far right, my two lesbian mothers, and rah 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 versus Chinese and Russian videos. If you do a search on it, you can find the videos that compare them. It's pretty crazy stuff. And the next one here, but Pete Hegseth drinks beer. All right, so we're not concerned of this debauchery, but Pete Hegseth drinks beer. Bad guy. And the last one here, I don't know if y'all caught this or not. It's kind of not directly on topic, but still germane. Left-wing salon likens MAGA to ISIS, blames toxic masculinity for recent terrorism. And I said it earlier, I'll say it one last time and then pass the torch back to you, John. We could benefit tremendously from more toxic masculinity. We need more, not less.
Yeah, what the left identifies as toxic masculinity, I actually kind of, in the opposite way, think toxic masculinity is the passive masculinity that the left wants to push on us more than anything. So I'm going to give you guys a chance, and we'll go kind of around the way we've been. I'll give you guys a chance to give some parting words, anything that you feel like we needed to cover in more detail, or anything you want to say. So we'll start with you, Bill, and I'll give you the floor, sir.
Yeah. So I'm asking for everybody's help to help us send a message of where the warfighting community stands. Never underestimate the curveball in the ninth inning. We want to be there during the confirmation hearings. All veterans, all concerned Americans, we ask you to meet us at 9 a.m. at the Vietnam War Memorial. Bring American flags. Also, anybody who wants to come into the confirmation hearing, that's actually the number one priority, is reach out to me, W.I. Brown 32099, W.I. Brown 32099, and we'll get you in that hearing. You're gonna have to get up, you're gonna have to be there at 4 a.m., but we'll get you in that hearing so we can stack the hearing with SEALs and veterans, so we can have a presence so people can know what we're about, that we support Pete, we love our country, and there's just too many sophisticated, advanced threats that we got to get our military back together again, focused in the right direction to protect us in times of need.
John, I think we lost.
Yeah, sorry, I was muted there for a second. Bill, what is the date on that? Do you have the date?
Hey, that's a great question. January 14th, next Tuesday. as many people as possibly can. Meet us at the Vietnam War Memorial at 9 a.m. Bring American flags. SEALs only march with American flags. We're proud of who we are. We're not wearing masks. So if somebody's wearing a mask or carrying some crazy type of sign or flag, they're not with us.
All right. I'd encourage everybody who can, if you're in that area or you can make time, do it. It's a worthy cause because it's literally the future of our country. Jeff, you're next in line. I'll give you a chance to kind of speak to whatever you want to in this matter.
Yeah, thank you. I'll just say, this is really about Pete. He's a great person, strong leader. We all know him personally since at least 2019. Some of us have known him even longer, and he's gonna do. We've gone over and over why he's gonna do a great job. He's not only has the experience as a major in the Army and fighting in multiple Iraq, Afghanistan, but Ivy League educated, double Princeton and Harvard master's degree. He's literally got, people are trying to say on The View that, oh, I'm a commentator too. I could just be Secretary of Defense, but it just shows how ignorant they were there. While he's, and also just his communication ability, as you can see in the videos. I get so fired up with him out there talking. He's so charismatic, so well-spoken. He's going to bring such a great morale to the troops. He's going to completely change the military. People are going to stay in. I've got tons of friends who are planning to get out, and now they're all staying in. They want to go. People a lot of times don't want to work in the Pentagon because it can be bureaucratic and everything, and now they're really excited to go work there and actually be able to make a difference for once, not just be a part of a bureaucratic system. And he's bringing that excitement to the military again, and wasn't even confirmed yet. So just realize that's the type of person we have that's going to be going in there, and I want everyone to support him in any way they can.
Absolutely. Well said, Jeff. Rob, the floor is yours, sir.
Yeah, so I am looking at this. In my perspective, I think this has to do with three things. One is experience, two is trust, and three is vision. Those are the three things that Pete has, and he will bring to the Department of Defense. He represents accountability and readiness. So, to echo what Bill said, we created a landing page. You don't have to remember it. Just Google Sleep Genius 62 Romeo. That combination of words in any format should bring you to the page. It's got all the information. It's got a map of the Capitol. It's got some videos of Bill, Pete, myself, and our action plan. So Sleep Genius and 62 Romeo, we've got a landing page there. And so hopefully that's helpful. I'll see you there on the 14th.
Yeah, and
Go ahead, Kosh.
Sure. I guess I'll just emphasize a point that Jeff and Rob both made, is that Pete actually has an extraordinary amount of experience. It may not be the conventional experience where he, worked his way up through the ranks and spent 34 years and then, was certified as a flag rank by the Senate. And remember, there's an issue with that. Like, there are excellent flag officers, but if you spend 34 years or 30 years or 25 years taking orders, sometimes it's difficult to be an independent thinker. And I think we've all kind of alluded to that at a time when we need some systemic change. Having somebody who has experience but is outside the system has incredible value. And I think if you notice a lot of the opposition to Pete's nomination, and I think this is foreshadowing for what you might see with other nominees, not much of it has been really substantive. It's all been really ad hominem attacks, right? The woke fair that Bill Brown talked about earlier the lawfare that Bill Brown talked about earlier didn't really work. So they instituted woke fair. Oh, he's a drinker. Oh, there's this, thing from the past, these illusions of, sexual harassment, all of this stuff that were really these ad hominem attacks instead of really focusing on policy. Right. And if you want to talk about policy, I'll have that debate about Pete's qualifications and his experience all day long. So I think both what Jeff and Rob said is right on. He actually has incredibly relevant and germane experience for the job that which he's about to undertake. And I'm biased for two reasons. One, we share the same degree, right? We both have a master's in public policy from Harvard's Kennedy School of Government. And I'll tell you that not every former Secretary of Defense has that. So Pete is an expert in policy. He's an expert in media. He's an expert in the military and operations. That's a real breadth of experience that he brings to bear on the job. And the final thing that I'll leave you with is, I've been Pete's swim buddy 3 different times swimming in the Hudson around the Statue of Liberty. And the very first year that we did it, Pete's an Army Ranger, but he is not an Olympic swimmer. And Pete struggled as we got around the Statue of Liberty. And the current was going against us. And Pete started to drown. And I mean real drown. I was an ocean lifeguard before I was a Navy SEAL. And Pete was he was going under. And you know what he did? He kept fucking swimming. He just clawed his way around the Statue of Liberty. Sure, with a little help from his frogman friends, absolutely. But that's like what we do. That's why we call it the teams, right? He never quit. He never gave up. And I think we need that kind of fighter at the helm of DOD now.
Very well said, okay. Yeah, very well said. So listen, we appreciate y'all coming on Survival Dispatch News. I know our audience does as well, and we all appreciate your service in addition to that. And we look forward to the next time that you can join us. We've got a short message from one of our sponsors, and John and I will be back with Chapter 2 in just a minute.
The Sawyer Mini is the most versatile personal filtration system available. It's a perfect solution for backpacking, hiking, hunting, fishing, scouting, international travel, and emergency preparedness. At a mere 2 ounces, the Mini fits in the palm of your hand and can filter up to 100,000 gallons of water from any freshwater lake, river, or stream. The Sawyer Mini has a 0.1 micron absolute pore size. It was tested to 10 million parts of bacteria and 1 million parts of protozoa without a single breakthrough. This is the highest level filters can be tested to, so we're confident these are the highest rates of filtration available.
All right. So the regular format of our show is that we have a first chapter that's the main topic that's covered in the thumbnail and the title. Then the second chapter is a dozen or so top news headlines. And then the final chapter is zany headlines and crazy memes, that sort of thing. So before we jump into that, John, I got to say that every single special forces guy that we've had on, from, the gentleman that we had with us tonight, to Doc Pete, to Don Mann, the Admiral Harwood, General Valley, they're all incredibly articulate and intelligent. I mean, they're best of the best.
Yeah, it's something, because being a warrior is not just being a brute, and you have to be mentally strong in order to be able to go through the training that these guys go through. You have to be able to be intelligent, mentally strong. These are some of the brightest and most physically fit people on the planet. So they are really dangerous in multiple ways. That's honestly, I think, why the left is so worried about Hegseth, is because he embodies all of that. The warrior guy that's been in combat, the guy that is insanely physically fit, but he's also insanely intelligent and not corrupted by the inside Washington bullcrap of the millies of the world who look like they haven't ran on a treadmill in like 15 years probably, but and I don't know that for sure, but just looking at the guy, he doesn't look like he's in the best physical shape. And this guy is, he's dangerous to the ideology that's been trying to be pushed on our military.
I would say Millie looks like he's been running to the refrigerator.
Yes.
All right. So the first story or video that we have to bring up is with regards to Judge Merchan, who's insisting on going ahead with sentencing Donald Trump next week. This is all in pursuit of a headline. The rumor is that there'll be no penalty, but once your sentence is given, then you become a convicted felon, and they want to have that headline, even though it's bullshit, and it's going to get overturned on appeal as well, based on the fact that the judge had major conflicts of interest. His daughter's taken millions of dollars in the past year from Democrat PACs. He's donated to every Democrat presidential candidate for years, and he gave faulty instructions to the jury. So they took these misdemeanors that the statute of limitations had expired on, said we're going to mash it all together, and this now becomes a felony. So that negates the statute of limitations. And if if 4 of you vote to convict on the first charge, four different jurors on the second count, and 4 more on the third count, I'll just add them up together. That's 12. We'll go ahead and we'll convict on that. You know, even a high school kid who's taken civics 101 knows better than that. That's not how our system works. But Mike Davis, I love this guy. He's one of Trump's attorneys. No bullshit. And he has a message here for Juan Merchan.
Juan Merchan. There's so much news that happened since we were last live, but got to get to Juan Merchan saying Trump will come into my courthouse and you're going to be sentenced. And I have a right, he said in his ruling, I have a right to put you in prison for 4 years. Juan Merchan.
I would say this to Juan Merchan, you better also lawyer up, because you're also, what you're doing is also a very serious federal civil rights felony. Again, 18 U.S.C. Section 241. There are so many reversible errors in this bogus New York case. But where Juan Merchan has really stepped into it legally is he put an illegal, unconstitutional gag order on President Trump, where he can't speak out during this process. And he can't speak out about the fact, for example, that Juan Merchan's adult daughter, Lauren Merchan, is raising money off of this case. Lauren Merchan is getting paid by Kamala Harris's campaign. That required Juan Merchan's recusal under New York statute. That's not just crazy Mike Davis saying that. A former Clinton judge said that on CNN. Caitlin Collins' show on CNN on April 5th. How did Juan Merchan respond? He told Trump, if you mention my daughter's name and my conflict of interest, I'm going to throw you in prison. That is a very, very serious crime by Juan Merchan. 18 U.S.C. Section 241.
John.
You know, the level of corruption and lawfare over the last 4 years, and really, honestly, the last 8 years, it's stomach turning, and I'm not surprised by it anymore. In all honesty, I expect it, but gosh, these people have to be held to account. They have to be dealt with. We have to have some examples. Like we have to, like. It's the whole mutually assured destruction. You're going to do this to us, we're going to do it to you. The difference is you're making your stuff up. We're going to get you on stuff you actually did, and that's the difference.
Well, it's the old Democrat ploy of accusing others of what they're doing. Obama's like the master of that, right? So moving on to the next one, no video with this, but explosive claim. Journalist Steve Baker alleges General Mark Milley approved heat and sound directed energy weapons during 2020 riots, claims he has evidence to prove it. So there's lots of evidence, anecdotally and otherwise, that SWAT teams and other law enforcement agencies have directed energy weapons. The one that I'm most familiar with was Canberra, Australia in 2021. They had some civil unrest. They pointed a directed energy weapon at the crowd that was microwave radiation. So microwaves heat up anything that has water in it, essentially. If you had no moisture in your atmosphere and you took a solid object, put it in the microwave, you could run it for an hour and that object will not be warmed up. It has to be moist. But the directed energy weapon in Canberra that was used, people reported that they felt like their faces were burning off, and then the cloud dispersed. So, and I think we're going to see a lot more, by the way, with regards to directed energy weapons. These are fairly powerful weapons, to say the least.
Yep, for sure. For sure.
So next one up, holy shit, Oklahoma announces that all of their schools will be teaching and promoting patriotism. We will reject a woke agenda. It will die here in Oklahoma. This is perfectly said. 1 minute, 50 seconds. I'm going to play the whole thing because this is setting an example for our entire country.
If you're wanting to reverse this trend, like you clearly are as the superintendent of Oklahoma schools, what's the first step? What's the remedy in your mind, sir?
The first step is you got to do what we're doing here in Oklahoma. You have to get back to teaching American exceptionalism and patriotism. We've rewritten our history standards. Every kid is going to know the influence the Bible had on American history, the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence. They're not going to be told that George Washington is an evil slave owner. They're going to be told that George Washington forever changed the course of world events. They're going to be told about the Declaration of Independence. Kids have to understand the values that built this country, and they need to love this country. We've got to go back to promoting patriotism, and that's got to be in every classroom. We're doing that here in Oklahoma. President Trump has laid out the course for this with the 1776 Commission. He has led the country on making us great again. States have to follow suit. You've got to get the teachers' unions who push this hatred for America out of your schools, get back to teaching the basics, and it starts with an understanding of American exceptionalism.
Yeah, I mean, I was asked in the last segment about what I wanted to do, and I always wanted to be a teacher and a football coach, and you realize the obstacles, the things that you have to jump over. It is very difficult, and a lot of people are not going into the industry because of that. I've got 15 seconds for you, sir.
Yeah, look, that's one of the things. Hey, look, the left-wing media doesn't like to talk about that. But good people haven't got into teaching because of the teachers' unions. They try to force you into teaching a radical ideology rather than math, history, and science. We've had record numbers of recruits here in Oklahoma because we said we're going to get back to the basics on teaching American exceptionalism, math, history, science. We will reject a woke agenda. It will die here in Oklahoma. We will support American values in our schools, and we are unapologetic about that, Trace.
Right. John?
Well, I can say this. I've been following Ryan Walters for a while now. He's been on several podcasts that I listen to on the regular. He's a regular guest on the Steve Day Show on the Blaze. Just an absolute firebrand of a dude. Like, he is re-establishing American patriotism and the biblical principles that this country was founded on in the state of Oklahoma. I would not be surprised if Oklahoma is very close to, or it definitely will be in the future, the most conservative state, the most patriotic state in the country based off of what they're doing. More of this. Everybody, I've said there's a lot of people that need to take notes from Ron DeSantis and the way that he got rid of the woke in Florida. People need to take notes of Ryan Walters in Oklahoma, and we need to apply this across every state that is red, every state that we have control over the legislature. Put that pressure, and this is, early marching orders for everybody, but put this pressure from the bottom up too in your school board meetings. Run for school board, guys. Like, those are open positions that are elected. Find this platform, use this platform, because I guarantee you, if you're in an area that is more conservative, this will gain traction because we all believe this stuff. We all know this stuff to be true. Reject the woke crap like they're doing in Oklahoma. That's just, it's a roadmap.
Yeah, it's all about ending the indoctrination of our youngins, basically.
Yep.
So next one up, I'm not familiar with this David Nino Rodriguez. This is just a post that caught my eye, and I can't speak to the veracity of it, so I'm not claiming that this is actually the truth, but he has an interesting theory. Tesla truck explosion was an intercepted reverse psyop, ? Josh Reed believes this was an intercepted reverse psyop to prevent Matthew Leibelsberger from blowing the whistle on multiple scenarios. Nino'sCorner.tv reveals the ISO prep that proves he was under duress, in which the deep state intercepted his mission disclosure and created the psyop to plant the manifestos. 2 minutes and 8 seconds.
Deep state does is they cover their tracks when something bad happens that can take very powerful people down. So what he's indicating is, hey, someone tried to abduct me. I obviously got away from them. Now I'm a man on a mission. I don't know whether it's because I've been read into these classified drone programs or because of this mass casualty incident that happened in 2019. But I'm gonna go to the top people I know and get this information out. This is what this guy has been doing the last few days. And so now he has a VBID in his car, and he's driving, and he stops at Trump Hotel in his Cybertruck. Symbolic, 100%. Elon Musk, Donald Trump, I'm trying to get your attention, right?
100%.
Now, here's my thought. I'm starting to think that he was not trying to kill himself. He was not trying to blow himself up. This guy is a weapons expert, explosives expert. He understands these things. He probably hooked that D-bid up himself, and which means that he most likely had some type of electronic trigger, whether it was a cell phone on a timer, whether it was some type of a signaling device. I don't know. It's
So
not going
who
to
was
be
in the car?
So I'm going to go right now with saying that he was in the car. Okay. Here's the other key. If he sent that email talking about the drone program and then about this other incident, he's not just stating that, saying that he doesn't have the information. This guy had the information. He had the intel to validate everything he was saying. I 100% believe this. And I believe the ISO prep signal that he gave, the 2006 versus 1998 car, was a signal to one of his friends, maybe a former team member, a current team member, someone in the project, maybe a family member.
But nobody's talking about this ISO prep except you.
No,
Right?
I know. Nobody's talking about how he says he was under duress, but then he gives the wrong vehicle. I mean, that's saying, hey, there's something going on.
That's ISO prep right there.
That's it.
Thoughts, John?
Yeah, so there's so many layers to this story because whoever the corpse is in the body or in the vehicle, the charred vehicle, did not shoot themselves. There's no way. There's no evidence video wise that happened. So if there was a gunshot wound to the head, and I'm kind of like addressing a different aspect of this, but was a gunshot wound to the head, it did not happen in the car. There would have been arterial spray all over the windows. Most likely the bullet of a 50 AE would have went through that window, and it would have been a very grotesque internal situation in the vehicle. You don't see that on the video. And he sat still for, I think, about 17 seconds. ISO prep is what people use in the intelligence world, and it is specific information that is given to indicate whether or not you're in duress. It's basically, think of it as a safe word, but it's a lot more in depth than that. It's a specific, and honestly, we don't know him giving that specific year and date of the make and model of his vehicle and all that stuff. It also could have meant 5 other things in the intelligence world. Like it could mean, hey, I'm triggering this thing. This is what's going to happen. So we don't actually know, but ISO prep is a real thing that is used in the intelligence world. It has been for years. It's spycraft type stuff, but it is in the intelligence world. It is to indicate a certain status level for you. And that's why he started his email to Shoemate, Sam Shoemate, in the manner that he did, but so that he could verify his ISO prep. And so I don't know. It does sound like, because people did research this and find that it was the wrong make and model vehicle, the first one that he owned. But I will point this out. They make up those questions and answers in their ISO prep. So it doesn't actually have to be based off of real data. So maybe he said that for sure to throw people off of the trail. You know what I'm saying? So there's so many aspects to this, and I'm very glad that this was broken by Sam and Sean Ryan, because it has opened this up. We wouldn't be asking these questions if we'd have let the FBI handle this. We wouldn't know crap. And perfect example is the what we showed last night with the picture of the video camera that is directly on top of where the car was sitting. None of that footage had been released because the FBI seized all of that footage. That's why.
Correct.
So we won't see that footage.
Yeah, good explanation, John. So the next one up: homelessness is getting worse by the day in San Diego, while many are making a lot of money off the problem as it continues to spiral out of control. The homeless industrial complex is in full swing. Here's a glimpse into the current state of things here. 9-minute video, clearly not going to play it all, but enough for everybody to get the gist of it.
Wow.
John, this reminds me of Washington State. When you go down I-5 from the Puget Sound to Seattle, there are multiple homeless encampments along the interstate, some of them with 10,000 plus people. And they've got them, I'm trying to remember now, the city, Olympia. We went into Olympia and there was a homeless encampment that had something like 4,000 people in it. And it was next to the Hobby Lobby. So they call it the Hobby Lobby encampment. And that's how they name these things. But essentially, even a state like Washington, that's not exactly a warm place to be, because they offer so much free stuff to people, whether it be healthcare, phones, food, you name it. There's been this explosion of homelessness and no solution or end in view at all. It's pretty crazy. Richest country in the world, and we've got that type of problem on our hands. We'll move into the next one here. This dad's rant perfectly captures the mood of the country. 2 minutes, 43 seconds. Probably going to play the whole thing because this is a very well said speech.
It's Mike Fody, and I'm from Buckingham Township, and I honestly don't know what country I'm living in anymore. You made the statement, of course, you've heard it so many times tonight, people violate the laws anytime they want. And you said it so cavalierly, so arrogantly. Of course, Mr. Harvey voted with you. Can you look at me, please? You disrespected the other voters. Thank you. A little bit of respect. I agree. You don't get punished anymore. That's where the country is because of the losing liberal left policies. One state steal less than $900. It's okay. I go to Home Depot the other day to buy a tool. It's locked up. I asked the guy why. Oh, they come in shopping carts. They load it up and we can't stop them. We're not allowed to do anything. They're the garbage policies you people endorse, okay? Oh, but you know what? If you're a conservative Christian grandmother and pray outside an abortion clinic, you get 10 years under the FACE Act.
That's a fact. Yeah.
That's really fair, isn't it?
So let me tell you something. Thank God on January 20th, there's a new sheriff in town.
Amen.
I know this pains you losing liberals, but you're going to have to get some TDS training. It's called Trump derangement syndrome. Because there's not going to be any more DEI. There's no more men and women's sports. There's no more men and women's locker rooms. Can you imagine your junior high daughter, self-conscious about her body, and she has to change or take a shower next to a naked man? These are the sick policies you people endorse. So that's gone. There's not going to be any more rapists and murderers coming over the border. And I just got word that the killer rapist, illegal immigrant, just got sentenced for killing Laken Riley. See, that's something you should cheer for, guys, not just look at me. No more illegal aliens on the voter rolls. That was a great one, wasn't it? You're fighting to put them back on. That's just great. But you know what? I know it pains you, but thank God Donald J. Trump is going to reverse it all. And by the way, please stay with these policies because 80% of Americans don't want them, never did, but you guys are too dense to understand. This country is founded on Christian values.
Straight up homily right there, man. That'll preach. If 90% of our preachers in our pulpits preach that on Sunday morning, we'd have a different country in a couple of weeks for sure. You're muted or something, Chris.
Dang it. My mistake. The only thing that I would add to this is that the Laken Riley Act was passed in the House of Representatives today, and it essentially states that illegal invaders who commit murder, rape, those sorts of crimes have to be deported. 159 Democrats voted against the bill. What kind of a scumbag votes against something like that? That is, we're back to the only way to explain it is those people are under the direct control of our enemies. and their
And,
evil all get
and
out.
I'll say this, like he said, keep doing this stuff, leftists. Keep doing it. You're just gonna keep losing because you're so dense, you don't understand. And he's right. I firmly believe that Trump won 60 or 70% of the vote. It's just that you guys cheated so much. Yep, 100%.
Totally agree. So check out this next one. Charlie Kirk and Don Jr. flew into Greenland today, and this is how they were greeted. Minute 17 seconds. I probably won't play the whole video.
A little pressure comes. We only have a couple hours of daylight, so we got to see everything, but we're really excited. Thank you guys so much. You're first seeing it. It's like an incredible place. We've been talking about going for a while. I was actually supposed to be here last spring. Some of the stuff I do in my free time. But just really excited to be here. Awesome country. The scenery coming in was just spectacular. So I'm very excited to be here.
So suffice it to say, he got a really warm greeting. And there's Don Jr. and me together actually on the red carpet at one of the NRA annual meetings. The security to get into that, of course, this was before the attempts on Trump's life, was so extreme, John. We pulled in underneath the venue, and I kid you not, there were over 100 black SUVs, Suburbans, and Escalades. Yeah, it was pretty crazy. And then the TSA had their security set up in the garage before you got to go through the doors. So you had to show proof of ID, which had to be cleared, by the way, a month in advance. And the funny story on that one, this is before Diamond died from Diamond and Silk. And so we get through security. I go through the door. I'm on the red carpet. And all I hear is this, "Hey, cowboy, come on over here and get a picture with us." And it's Diamond and Silk, and they had a guy between them. They pushed him out of the way, and they waved me over. I got a bunch of pictures with them. So.
Yeah, I haven't gotten a Dave actually has a picture. We have it there at the range of him with Trump Jr. at SHOT Show. I'm kind of hoping. I doubt he's there because of when the inauguration's happening, but be awesome if he was there when we're there in a couple weeks. So, but yeah, I need to get my picture with him. So. That's awesome. That is awesome.
They were so friendly. Very, very nice ladies. Absolutely. All right. And see, this is why I refer to myself as the Forrest Gump of the business world. Never the smartest guy in the room, but boy, howdy, I have been so blessed to be invited to things like that on a regular basis. So, and unfortunately, Mike Sterling's not here, so I can't rub it in his face that I've been to Mar-a-Lago hanging out with my buddy Donald Trump and whatnot. All right, moving on to the next one. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer may cut Britain's security ties with US unless Trump distances himself from Elon Musk. The crap that's going on in England, John, this asshole was the head of their, whatever they call their child protective services when this stuff started 20 years ago. And they put people in jail over there for saying anything bad with regards to these invaders. So there's a number floating around saying that 250,000 young girls were raped. I've heard from other sources the number is actually over 1 million. Okay. And then you've got peckerheads like this that say this is all far right-wing conspiracy. Then you throw Tommy Robinson in jail for contempt of court because he did one documentary on the rape of Britain. Then it turned into 5 separate documentaries. And they found him in contempt of court because he said something bad about the rapist. These people can get bent. You know what I mean? Like, fuck these guys. And then they want to arrest Americans? Good luck with that.
The UK barring a move from the supernatural is a lost country, along with most of Europe. Just lost. We cannot depend on them, and it's going to further go down unless something drastically changes. They're in revival or bust territory, basically.
Yeah, very few exceptions. Poland, Hungary, but there's just a handful of holdouts in Europe that haven't succumbed to the invasion. All right, to DC Drano. So for those who aren't familiar, he's an attorney in Tampa. The guy is wicked smart. Fetterman is now sponsoring the Lake and Riley Act, which again, it passed the House today, goes into the Senate probably tomorrow, which would ensure violent illegals are deported, not released into society. Hopefully other Democrats join them. We're done with illegal aliens terrorizing women and children. I don't know that there's really much more that we can add to that.
What I'll say is Fetterman has made more based statements over the last probably 3 to 6 months than any other Democrat, all the other Democrats in the Senate combined, in all honesty. It's crazy.
He's made a bunch of based comments since he had a stroke.
Right.
So he's either been replaced by another actor or something in his head. He couldn't string half a dozen words together before the stroke. Do you remember? And he was wearing, he looked like a bum, the stuff that he would wear into the Senate. And now all of a sudden he's pretty darn conservative. So anyway, crazy stuff. All right. The next one is the end of chapter 2. And this is in Florida. And this is with regards to squatters. And unlike New York, if you are a squatter and you are illegally occupying a home here or domicile in Florida, this is what you can expect.
Police! Come on out. Come with your hands up. Come out. Now. Everybody out. Step out now! Let's go! Step out! Who else is inside? Keep it walking. Orlando Police, come to the front now.
All right, let's see your hands. Yeah, put your hands up. Your hands. Keep walking. Anybody else in there? Come on.
Step out. Hands in the air. Walk this way.
Is anybody else in there?
Step out. Step out. Come on. What's going on? Everything will be explained later. Stop. Don't move, okay? Who's got an extra set of cuffs?
And that, my friend, is how we do it in Florida.
Had to do double cuff on that one dude there. He couldn't get his arms behind him.
Yeah, it's a funny point that you raised there, John, is how many of these illegal invaders who are claiming asylum from these shithole countries are morbidly obese.
Yeah, they don't look like they're missing meals to me.
Correct. So anyway, all right. So before we dive into chapter 3, which we'll go pretty quickly through, zany headlines and memes and funny stuff like that, I want to give a shout out to our friends at Native Hydrate, nativehydrate.com/dispatch. Get up to 44% off of their branched chain amino acid drinks. I saw somebody, John, earlier in the comment section saying that they drink sweet tea, but they're working to cut back on it. And all I've got to say with regards to this is, number one, it passes the taste test, which a lot of BCAAs do not. As a matter of fact, almost all of them taste like shit. There's 3 flavors from these guys. Taste really good. But I'll tell you right now that if you drink sodas and you drink sweet tea and you stop drinking them and drink this instead, your energy level will go through the roof in the blink of an eye. I'm telling you, within 24 hours, you will notice a difference. It is an awesome product. No, I didn't get paid to say that. I've been using that product now for about 8 months, and that's highly unusual for me to stick with an OTC supplement like that because, like I said, they taste like shit. And eventually I drop it and decide to move on to something else, but not these ones. All right, so let's get into some interesting headlines. This one, I know you've seen this, John, but this is fantastic. We're going to rename the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America.
So we're going to be changing the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America, which has a beautiful ring that covers a lot of territory. The Gulf of America, what a beautiful name. And it's appropriate. It's appropriate.
I'm waiting for the liberals to have a meltdown over that, John. What do you think?
Oh yeah, and what's really funny about it is this is such on brand stuff for the America that you and I really came to know and love. I'm a child of the 80s, and you're about a decade older than me, but so like we both kind of experienced that. Hey, we're America, bitch. Get off our front lawn. And that's what this is, man. And here's the thing that Trump understands more than anything is he understands how to brand things to the point and to exude strength out of that branding. It's just like all this stuff with Greenland, all the stuff with Canada. It is consolidating these things to say, hey, this is America's. Stay away. And if you don't like it, GTFO.
Exactly. None of this is just by fluke. There's absolute purpose behind him doing this stuff. Check this one out. Minute 41 seconds. Not going to play the whole thing, but Scottsdale, Arizona passenger trying to catch his flight found himself stuck as a Waymo self-driving car repeatedly drove him in circles.
Okay, why is this happening to me on a Monday? I'm in a Waymo
Connected
car.
to rider support. This call may be recorded for quality assurance.
This car is just going in circles.
Hi there, Mike. This is Gab. I'm calling from Waymo Support. I'm just calling because I received a notification that your car might be experiencing some routing issue. Please bear with me while I am.
Yeah, I got a flight to catch. Why is this thing going in a circle? I'm getting dizzy. Look at what it's doing.
I understand. I'm really, really sorry, Mike. We're currently working with the situation of the vehicle. Is it circling around a parking lot, right?
It's circling around a parking lot.
How messed up is that, John? Not very confident inspiring.
This is the thing, and I'll tell you what will kill the self-driving craze for a while is you put a self-driving semi on the road and it malfunctions and plows through about 30 freaking cars. That'll end the self-driving car craze real quick. Because, it's just.
Anyway, too funny. All right, moving on to the next one. Just in, UFC CEO Dana White joins Meta's board of directors. The move is just one of the recent moves in recent weeks, signaling massive changes at the social media giant. I've never been interested in joining a board of directors until I got the offer to join Meta's board, White said. I'm a huge believer that social media and AI are the future. I'm very excited to join this incredible team to learn more about this business from the inside. There is nothing I love more than building brands, and I look forward to helping take Meta to the next level. So this is all part of Zuckerberg's process of trying to, beg forgiveness from Donald Trump. And we've got some memes coming up, I think, a little bit later. Here
and there's a video. Actually, I'm going to do a reaction video for our channel on this whole thing, specifically Zuckerberg's video that he put out earlier today. This guy knew this was going on. Don't let him play that this was not something he did not know was going on with the censorship. They absolutely knew what was going on. So he's not innocent in this, and he's trying to play the innocent thing. The better thing for him to say was, you know what, guys, I messed up. We messed up, and not try and sugarcoat it. Hey, yeah, I was listening to Ben Shapiro earlier. Their engagement on Meta went down 90%. He's the number one conservative engagement person on Meta. They were getting 1 billion hits a month. It went down to 100 million. That's still a lot, but when you talk about 90% loss in engagement, Chris, you know what that would do. You lose 90% of your engagement. You cannot run your company the same way.
Correct. Especially when you're in the business of selling advertisements.
Exactly.
No advertisements.
Right. Because advertisers expect results, just like, the advertisers on here. They expect us to be able to sell products for them and to endorse products for them. And we test those things out and we give you our honest opinion. But that's really how these businesses make money. And you have to make money to be a business, so this is, in my opinion, there should be some restitution paid to those people that were we don't get any. Survival Dispatch doesn't get any traction on Meta. In fact, you said you quit doing anything on Meta like years ago because we don't get any traction. That's by design. There are people on Meta that would engage with our content if they knew it existed.
Yeah, so we're broadcasting to Facebook because it doesn't take any extra effort on our behalf. How many people do you think are watching this stream on Facebook?
Typically I see 1, 2, or 3 on there.
Goose egg, 0. Yep. And that's because they don't agree with our content. My question would be this, it's rhetorical, but name just one prominent conservative who was deplatformed by Facebook that has had their account restored, other than Donald Trump.
Nobody.
Correct.
And that's the reality of it. They know they can't cancel people that are as big as the Daily Wire and stuff like that, but they can cancel people in our sphere and delete them and push them down to where they're unengageable. Because here's the thing, the demographic on Facebook is like in the mid 50s to mid 60s is the common demo in there. They are typically the ones that engage most with stuff like Fox News and things like that. They would also engage with our content. Why do we not see massive engagement there? Because they've suppressed.
Exactly.
That's the reality of it.
Yeah. Just in, Joe Biden has released 11 Yemeni terrorists from Guantanamo Bay who were captured in the aftermath of the 9/11 attacks. He's trying to cause as much damage as possible on his way out, while Brennan and Obama are his puppet masters, but disgusting. All right, let's move to something that's a little bit funnier. Brazilian bull walks owner home after a long night of drinking.
Lá é Apolo aí, Apolo. Ele queria render esse touro a Juliana. Alô, Juliana. Aí, eu tô tentando arrumar pra casa, gente. Aí, Juliana, seu touro aqui, ó. Valeu. Olha, galera, é o boi que tá levando pra casa, ó. Tá bêbado, tá bêbado. Aí, ó.
That is some funny shit right there.
That bull acts like he's done this a time or two.
Yeah, boy, howdy is he ever. New former Georgia Lieutenant Governor Jeff Duncan has been formally expelled from the Georgia Republican Party. Duncan endorsed Kamala Harris for president in 2024 and has been attacking MAGA Republicans. What I want to say here, and we've said it before, but I'm going to keep saying it because somebody in the comment section will have a snotty comment if we don't say this. Republicans, Democrats, two different sides of the same coin. We are not Republicans. We don't support Republicans. We support conservative, libertarian, lowercase L, patriots. And MAGA kind of falls under that umbrella. But good to see that one of the bad guys got tossed to the curb here. All right, next one up, breaking the House is voting on the Laken Riley Act today. It will ensure illegal aliens like the one who killed Laken Riley are detained and deported before they can commit heinous crimes. The bill will require the detention of any illegal alien charged with theft or burglary. It would also give power to attorneys general to sue the U.S. if they can prove their state is being harmed through non-enforcement of immigration laws. Senate Majority Leader John Thune is also moving on the bill. Both chambers hope to pass it and have it ready for Trump ASAP. And as we already reported, the House of Representatives has already passed this bill. So definitely a step in the right direction. I love how the Trump admin is being proactive in getting this stuff lined up and ready for a signature. Way better than an executive order that can be wiped out, actually having formal legislation pass. All right, next one up. This is from someone in Great Britain. So people have had enough of Elon Musk interfering with our country's democracy when he clearly knows nothing about Britain. It's time to summon the U.S. ambassador to ask why an incoming U.S. official is suggesting the U.K. government should be overthrown. Elon Musk's reply, what exactly do I fail to understand about your failure to stop mass rape of little girls in Britain, you sniveling cretin? So this is one of the occasions I agree with Elon. I'm not Elon's biggest fan, and I've stated that many times, but I think he's on the right side of this one for sure. In a similar vein, did you know this, John? The Queen is dead.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
Too funny. So actually, the next one here, by the way, relates to Elon Musk. So, Rosie O'Donnell and the rest of them are complaining that nobody voted for Elon Musk, and billionaires shouldn't be interfering in our government. So the caption that went with this picture is that Alex Soros appears to be collecting politicians. I mean, he runs the Soros Foundation now, many billions of dollars at his disposal, but it's okay for him and his father, George Soros, but not okay for someone like Elon because they disagree with his ideologies. That's crazy stuff. All right, check this out. And this is good. Okay. So Klaus Schwab, leader of the World Economic Forum, column 1, Elon Musk, column 2, carbon tax. Why carbon tax is crucial to curbing climate change. That's from the World Economic Forum. From Elon Musk, it is high time there was a carbon tax. Universal basic income. 4 reasons cities should embrace universal basic income from the WEF. From Elon Musk, as a reminder, I'm in favor of universal basic income. mRNA injections. 3 tactics to overcome COVID-19 vaccine hesitancy from the World Economic Forum. Elon Musk, to be clear, I do support vaccines in general and COVID vaccines specifically. The science is unequivocal. Transhumanism, so putting mechanical parts, computer parts into our bodies. Would you let your employer implant a microchip in your hand? These workers have. That's from the WEF. From Elon Musk, creating a neural lace is the thing that really matters for humanity to achieve symbiosis with machines. And one world government. In his talk at the WEF, Elon Musk discussed how society needs to work together to create some kind of world government. He stated that this would be necessary to address the challenges currently posed by climate change. John, you want to make any comments on this?
Yeah, and I will. I don't know all of the dates. It looks like most of these are older tweets of his. I know that, and I do give a little bit of grace for what Elon has done recently. The X stuff that has come out recently with a score. You know, if there's not some changes to that, he's going to lose a lot of my support on that. I think in general over the last year, he has hit more home runs than he has struck out. But we also have to remember, this man was not brought up in a conservative world. He's not, a man of faith by, in any stretch of the imagination. So we have to be careful with that. And there's nothing wrong with this. I'll call balls and strikes on Elon Musk all day long. We just put up a post where we agree with him. I'll agree with him when I agree with him, and I will push him. I will push him back on him when it's needed. I tagged him in a tweet on X about my X score, which ironically is the same as Chris's, who has this up. We're both a 38 on our X score.
Everybody is a 38 with very few exceptions.
It's really interesting, that number. I don't know what that equivocates to. And I'll say this, like I said a couple of nights ago, I think this is partially, they've turned over a lot of this stuff to AI. And I think that AI is messing a lot of this stuff up because of the input. A lot of the AI inner workings was begin development with liberal input. And there's still probably a lot of liberal people that work at X too. So the input for AI actually matters. In a lot of ways, it is not a sentient being. So the input matters.
Just go have a look at Chat GPT. What a piece of garbage AI. If you punch something really simple in, draw an image of Pete Hegseth in front of a tank with the American flag, and it'll reply back, I'm not allowed to do that. That's outside of my parameters. That's political in nature, blah, blah, blah. But as far as Elon is concerned, this is not black and white. There's lots of shades of gray, but I don't have 100% faith in Elon. I think he saved the election for us, but by the same token, he doesn't give a shit about your right to free speech, my right, or anybody else's, unless it's on a topic that suits him.
Well, and this is the thing that kind of blows my mind. How much negativity has he been pushing out through his own tweets? And yet we're supposed to be positive on everything. Right. Now, I agree with the negativity that he's been pushing out on the child rape in England, but that's not positive stuff. You're not saying anything positive. I guarantee you your X score is not 38. And that's the thing that bugs the snot out of me.
Him saying that if you post positive stuff, you'll be rewarded with a higher X score. The higher your X score is, the more likely your content will be exposed to people. It is a crock of bullshit, man. We don't live in this rainbow world where everything is pleasant and nice. And Tim Pool, as I mentioned last night, manipulated this. He spent the entire day blowing sunshine up people's asses. And he went from something like a 42 to a 100 on his social credit score, his X score. This It's garbage. It's bullshit.
Yep.
This is specifically why our good friend Todd Callender and my team are building Cloud Hub version 2, which will most likely be called Liberty Club. I think that's where we're going to settle on the name. And it will be the only social media platform out there that has no censorship or suppression, with only a couple exceptions: pornography and illegal activity. So the opportunity, this is great timing for us, put it that way. And stay tuned for some exciting updates on that, because it's coming quicker than most people would anticipate. All right, Donald Trump, truth he wrote earlier today: I am hearing that the people of Greenland are mega. My son, Don Jr., and various representatives will be traveling there to visit some of the most magnificent areas and sites. Greenland is an incredible place, and the people will benefit tremendously if and when it becomes part of our nation. We will protect it and cherish it from a very vicious outside world. Make Greenland great again. And I think the probability of that happening is significantly higher than Canada becoming a territory or the 51st state. Here's a little rhyme for you. John: roses are red, violets are blue. I really love being on a government watch list with all of you.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah. All right. Check this out. France's government collapses. Germany's government collapses. Trudeau to resign this week. Trump's election certified by Kamala. That's pretty awesome. James Woods, who's reported to have an IQ north of 180. I've met him before, by the way. And Democrats not only couldn't stand, they don't even applaud when Republican Speaker Johnson promises a secure border. Make no mistake, this election was the salvation of America. And had we lost it, she would be gone forever. Do not trust the left for anything, ever. I don't know that there's really much that we could add to that, because it's, we're in complete synchronicity with that. And give me a second here. We're down to the last couple tabs. So if pedophilia is just sexuality, then burying them all is just gardening. Sounds about right.
Solid logic.
And last but not least, from the Battle and B, guy who said Facebook was not suppressing free speech announces Facebook will stop suppressing free speech.
It's funny because it's true. Remember how many years we were told? We're not suppressing anybody. Nope. You were.
Just liars. Absolute freaking liars. All right. So that's the end of chapter 3. We're almost done here. Quick shout out to our friends at flexindustries.com. Fastest triggers on the market, bar none. Their Glock triggers, the G Flex. It is not a switch, so it is legal, unlike a Glock switch. They've got AR triggers, 3MR trigger, and they've got an AK trigger coming here shortly that's bad to the bone. And I'll show actually our friend Reggie playing with a prototype version of the AK trigger.
AK Flex. AK Flex. The crazy part about this thing, it can fit in all platforms. This right here is in a 9mm. We running in the 7.62, 5.45, short, even in the Draco, the long 16-inch. AK Flex, baby.
So there's a link down below in the description, flexindustries.com. Discount code SD17 gets you 17% off. S is in Sam, D is in David, 17 to get 17% off. All right, so John, we're at the homework stage, and this is related to the topic of chapter 1, which is confirming Pete Hegseth as the Secretary of Defense. Number 1, write to your congressional rep and senators, letting them know that you want Pete Hegseth confirmed, and if they vote against him, that you'll work with another candidate to primary them. If you go to patreon.com/survival dispatch, download the brief for tonight. There is a link to govtrack.us where you can find all of your Congress critters coordinates. Next one, publicly support Pete Hegseth on your socials. Next one, repost media that supports Pete Hegseth, including Survival Dispatch News. And last but not least, speak out against the woke BS that's infiltrated our military thanks to garbage leadership. John, can you think of any other homework items in light of our discussion on Pete Hegseth?
I think it's just really, we've got to start applying pressure from the grassroots area and pushing up. You know, it's like what we were talking about earlier or last night with going to your school boards, doing all that kind of stuff. This is all important stuff to get the agenda pushed forward, and it starts at the local level. But, you know, being involved and being connected to this stuff is worth it all, because it's the active and engaged minority that changes things. And that's the truth. And that's how this country was founded. The vast majority of people didn't want to go to war with England to form this country, but it was that motivated, small percentage that actually got things done and got it done and created the country that we have. So we continue to fight, we continue to engage, and we engage on the battlefield of ideas. And that's what we have to do.
Well said, John. Before we get to the conflicted question of the night, tomorrow night's episode, 7 p.m. Eastern, as per usual. The topic will be whatever is at the top of the news cycle tomorrow. The same goes for the following day, but Friday we have JJ Carroll coming back to give an update on the border. The CEO of investusa.org, which means protect a vest, not investing your money. Michael Letts will be joining us as well. He's got an incredible operation where people donate money. It's a 501c3. And then they turn around and they give these badass titanium plates and carriers to law enforcement officers around the country. Shocking number. Less than 50% of law enforcement officers have body armor. Vast majority of the time, the only time they have body armor is if they buy it themselves. So Michael Letts, his mission on doing that's phenomenal. And then Saturday night, we kind of have a follow-up to tonight's episode with some very high-profile women in our military, including Amy Forsyth, Teresa Carpenter, Jennifer, whose last name escapes me. But these are super high-caliber, high-profile women in our military. Amy, in particular, has hosted shows on Fox News. Her resume is absolutely amazing. So one quick plug for our Patreon, patreon.com/survival dispatch. 50% of the content is free, but for $9.99 a month, you get all of our daily situation reports, which is essentially a highly curated publication. Ballparkish, the team that puts that together reads over 1 million words per day in articles. Myself, I read 250,000+ words per day. I actually wrote a piece of software to track that at one point in time. You get access to exclusive behind the scenes content, access to our private encrypted Signal chat. So if you sign up, send an email to support@survivaldispatch.com with your phone number after you install Signal on your phone, and you'll get an invite to that group chat. The volume of intel and camaraderie and intelligence being shared is just, it's phenomenal. You also get our 228-page essentials guide for free. So we have 36 e-magazines. They're $9.99 a piece. If you sign up, they're $4.99 a piece. And the essentials guide is basically all the highlights from those 36 magazines. You also get early access to content. And want to quickly mention at the end of the daily sit rep, we've added a restricted section for content that cannot be published on YouTube, Facebook, etc. And we've also put together a list of vendors and products that we endorse with discount links and discount codes. It's about 2 dozen. We have a formal relationship with over 300 vendors, but those 2 dozen are the ones that we can really firmly get behind. That's it. Just the conflicted question. John, how are you preparing for scenarios where both food production and water supply cease to function in your area?
That's a good one. So I have the ability to catch rainwater and purify it. I have a couple systems in place for that. And I also grow my own food. I have also locally sourced a lot of my food with some veteran friends of mine that have cattle and pigs. And so I generally think overall my and I speak this with more confidence than I did about my power the other night. I generally think that I have some fellow patriots. My, I guess you could call bug out location is at one of these places where there is live animals available. And I'm a part of the security team for our group that if things got really bad, that's where we go and we hold up there. So I'm not as worried about that. For my house, I always have a store of 3 to 6 months worth of food, whether it be freeze dried options or canned options. I do a lot of canning. Haven't as much this winter. Typically, the winter is canning season, but haven't as much this winter just because of the amount of things I've had going on. But that's something, I have a couple of months worth of food that's already canned in jars in my house. So it would take quite a while for us to run through the food, but that's always stuff that people should think about. Because the reality is as we found out with the supply chain issues of 2020, anytime that there is a storm, like I just went through a winter storm, the shelves were bare the day before. I had to go in and get a couple of things, just like a gallon of milk kind of thing, the milk and bread thing. The shelves were so bare because people just panicked. And that's when you start to realize, man, there's not a whole lot outside of what's on the shelves in the grocery stores.
Yeah, well said. So I've just had a couple quick comments. Number one, we have a ton of food stockpiled, a bunch of it in the freezer, but we also have 2 freeze dryers. So we have a ton of food that's been freeze dried, just needs to be reconstituted. My wife does canning as well. She's got this really cool machine where you can put even like uncooked drumsticks in oil and a mason jar, and it sucks the lid down so tight, and then you put the spinner on the top. So we've got stuff like that. We have a gazillion different ways to purify water. And on top of that, we've got water bobs where we can fill our tubs full of water, which we do before a hurricane hits us, because having no electricity sucks balls here in Florida. Hurricane Matthew, for example, which is 2016, 2017. We had no power for 3 weeks, but we also had no water because the sewer main burst next to a water main. The no water was a bigger deal, right? Because how do you flush your toilet? How do you personal hygiene? And it was isolated to our area of the historic district, and everybody's working. So I still had to go to work, right? I had to go meet with clients, and I can't, smell like a goat or anything like that. But being without water really sucks. We also have a special barrel outside that goes in line with the hose bib and the garden hose. And it's a special type of plastic where you don't get any growth inside of it. And it's got 30 gallons of fresh water in it at any point in time. So just something extra. But I mean, we've got so many holding ponds here in Florida. It's not hard to find water, and then you just got to purify it in that case. But we're pretty prepared under our household here. I want to mention that we've been, say for a month or so, we've been playing some cool videos at the end of each broadcast. And last night we had an AC/DC one with Elon and Trump, and I had brutal heartburn. So I get up looking for something for my heartburn, and I noticed a notification up on my laptop. So I came in here, and it said that our video on our main YouTube channel, which is about 420,000 subscribers, and our other secondary YouTube channel, which doesn't have many people on it, had been blocked because of a global copyright infringement on AC/DC. So you're safe to watch this stuff on Rumble and X, and when we upload our stuff to Cloud Hub. But I fully expect that trend will continue. So if you're watching this in the future on YouTube as a rerun and not as an actual live broadcast, and you hear us mention the closing video, but then you don't see it, that's why you won't see it. You got to go watch it over on another platform. That's it for me, John. Anything on your end?
No, actually. So, Righteous Savages, we are putting out content. We got some videos coming up, a couple new episodes. They're actually a couple weeks old, but I had a little bit of a delay in my life. But they're going to be dropping later on this week. Look for our video on Friday on Survival Dispatch main YouTube channel. Our training schedule will be out by the end of the week for 2025. Guys, there is no better opportunity for you guys to get some training. We also have online training that we are currently diligently recording with myself and Dave as the instructors to give you guys some tools you can use if you can't make the trip to Southern Illinois. And that's going to be available on both our Patreon and for outright just purchase. If you are a Patreon member on our Patreon, you get it for free. And who knows, maybe some of that content will end up with Survival Dispatch as well. Just because we want to give you guys everything that we possibly can. We believe that training is key to survival in any kind of situation, whether it be weather related or whether it be life and death, terrorism, that kind of stuff. With everything that's going on in the world, you guys are well aware of it. Do not skip the training aspect. And I know that some people don't like to hear that, but you're never gonna survive unless you train. And train your mind, train your body, and we'll have that available. So we hope to see some of you guys in our classes this year. So other than that, that's all I got.
Just to answer Kanzi's question, this is not online training. This is in-person training at the range that John and his partner Dave own in Southern Illinois, Tombstone it's called. And just to quickly answer Lenny's question, that is a water bob. So it's essentially a liner for your bathtub. And once it's in the bathtub, you can hook up this little hand pump and easily pump the water out of it. But for those of us here in Hurricane Central, we fill up our bathtubs with this. It's about 100 gallons. It says right actually on the box, 100 gallons, 20 something bucks. Oh, they've gone up. Biden inflation. I think we paid $25 on April 13. We replaced ours because they do break down over time, but $35, 100 gallons of water. A whole lot better than not having any water. But other than that, we will be back tomorrow night at the usual time, 7 p.m. Eastern. Please like, share, comment, subscribe. God bless America.
A man slaughtered a big cow, lit the grill, and said to his son,
"Son, call our relatives, friends, and neighbors to eat with us. Let us feast."
His son took to the street and started shouting,
"Please help us put out a fire at my dad's house."
After a few moments, a small group of people came out, while the rest acted like they didn't hear the cry for help. Those who came ate and drank until late. The stunned father turned to his son and said,
"The people who came I barely know. Some I had never seen before. So, where are our relatives, friends, and neighbors?"
The son replied,
"Those who came out of their homes came to help us put out a fire in our house, not for the party. These are the ones who deserve our generosity and hospitality."
Moral: those who don't help you during your struggle shouldn't eat with you at your victory party.
This is where we hold them. This is where we fight.